Chapter 2148. Yin Jianyue isn't dead? Gale Xiao exclaimed in shock. He had already prepared for the worst, and now that Nye Tian said Yin Jianyue was still alive, how could he not be surprised? Of course not. Didn't you say you wanted to capture him alive? Nye Tian laughed, but he spat out a mouthful of dirty blood because he used too much force. In the battle with Yin Jianyue, not only did he consume a lot of blood qi, but his 9 dragon veins were also severely damaged, so he was very weak now. Yin Jianyue isn't dead. Yin Jianyue is captured. Ha ha, that's great. Gale Xiao seemed to have gone crazy and almost jumped up. Gale Xiao, what do we do now? Nye Tian took a deep breath and asked with a frown. Let's go back first. Gale Xiao calmed down and prepared to go back immediately. Can you still go back after capturing the princess of the Yinhua dynasty? However, at this moment, a low voice suddenly sounded in the void. Then, a figure appeared and looked at Nye Tian and the others with a strange expression. Nye Tian's expression changed when he heard the voice. He turned around and saw the face of the person behind him. He exclaimed, Xian Zongfeng, it's you. Xian Zongfeng. The person who appeared behind Nye Tian and the others was none other than Sword Master Wu of the Divine Martial Sword Pagoda of the 9 Realms, Xian Zongfeng. Nye Tian never thought that he would meet Xian Zongfeng here. Previously, Xian Zongfeng's plot to kill Windfire City was exposed and he was severely injured by Qianyu Tower Master Windfire Qianyu. He barely survived by activating the elf protection. After that, Nye Tian told Ming Jianyu and the others about Xian Zongfeng in the Jili Demon region. He confirmed from the Water Fairy King, Shui Jing, that Xian Zongfeng was a night elf. The night elves were the elf race that lived in the abandoned land. Nye Tian guessed that Xian Zongfeng would most likely appear in the abandoned land. However, he never thought that he would meet the latter here. Xian Zongfeng's appearance had completely changed. His facial features were much more exquisite than before, but his eyes were darker. However, his voice and aura did not change, so Nye Tian was sure that it was Xian Zongfeng. Nye Tian, long time no see. Seeing Nye Tian again, Xian Zongfeng put on a strange smile and said, You seem surprised to see me. Nye Tian frowned and said in a cold tone, Xian Zongfeng, I really didn't expect that we would meet here. I didn't expect that a kid from one of the 9 domains could actually come to the land of the abandoned. Cold smile appeared on Xian Zongfeng's face. His eyes were filled with murderous intent as he said in a deep voice, I didn't manage to kill you in the 9 realms. But this time, you won't be able to escape. As he spoke, Xian Zongfeng took a step forward and a terrifying sword aura soared into the sky. The sharp aura seemed to be able to split the heaven and earth. Nye Tian frowned and his face darkened. His strength was already far below Xian Zongfeng's, and now that he was seriously injured, it was even more impossible for him to fight against Xian Zongfeng. Nye Tian, you guys go first. Leave this person to me. At this moment, Mizuhara Kaori stood up and stared at Xian Zongfeng cold. She said in a deep voice, I don't care who you are. If you want to hurt Nye Tian, you have to ask me first. Xian Zongfeng looked at Mizuhara Kaori and his eyes narrowed. He then laughed and said, I didn't expect that even the Water Fairy clan would appear. But don't you know? You elemental fairies are never a match for the Yin-Yang fairies. I'll only know if I'm a match for you after I try. Mizuhara Kaori's face darkened. The elemental force in her body began to circulate, and a powerful aura spread in the air. Xian Zongfeng's expression changed. He then smiled playfully and said, So you're a elemental genius. Interesting. Presumptuous. Mizuhara Kaori could feel the contempt in Xian Zongfeng's eyes. She roared and struck out with her palm. Instantly, the elemental force gathered and a 5 elemental palm shadow appeared, pressing down on Xian Zongfeng like a mountain. You want to fight me with this kind of strength? What a joke! Xian Zongfeng sneered. A 3-foot hidden blade appeared in his hand and he swung it. The sword shadow whistled, and the sword radiance poured down like a waterfall. Kaboom! The next moment, when the sword shadow and the palm shadow collided, the palm shadow directly collapsed, and the fierce sword will directly bloomed, extremely dazzling. Watch out! Nye Tian suddenly felt something was wrong and screamed. At the same time, Mizuhara Kaori felt threatened and quickly retreated. Unfortunately, it was too late. Swoosh! The moment the sword shadow landed, a ray of blood appeared. Mizuhara Kaori's arm was cut off. Fortunately, he retreated in time. If he was any later, he would have been cut in half. Damn it! Mizuhara Kaori's body trembled. He covered his severed arm with one hand and looked at Xian Zongfeng in horror. He did not expect Xian Zongfeng to be so strong. You dare to show off in front of me with this kind of strength? You're courting death. Xian Zongfeng sneered with a look of contempt. Let's go. At this moment, Gale Xiao moved and was ready to leave with Nye Tian and Mizuhara Kaori. However, before he could move, his body trembled and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Damn it! Why now? Gale Xiao growled. He did not expect the Dark Moon evil seal in his body to be activated at this moment. He knew that he could not suppress the Dark Moon evil seal any longer. That was why he took the risk and came to the Dark Knight Azura field to catch Yin Jianyue. You must be the boy from the Gale clan. It's time for you to spit out all the blood-weeping sword infants you stole. Xian Zongfeng looked at Gale Xiao and said with a cold smile. You're from the Dark Moon sect. Gale Xiao's eyes trembled and he immediately understood and exclaimed. You're not too stupid. Xian Zongfeng smiled coldly and said, I'm only here to catch you. I didn't expect to meet Nye Tian. What a pleasant surprise. Nye Tian frowned and finally understood why Xian Zongfeng would appear here. He was from the Dark Moon sect. He knew that Gale Xiao had been suppressing the Dark Moon evil seal with the blood-weeping sword infant. Therefore, it was not surprising that Xian Zongfeng could find Gale Xiao. Now, all three of you must die. Xian Zongfeng's lips twitched and the killing intent in his eyes became stronger. However, at this moment, he seemed to have noticed something. His expression changed, and he looked at the void in the distance. Brat, I've finally caught up to you. In the next moment, a violent voice was heard and a figure landed. It was the black-clothed referee from the Dark Knight Azura field. Damn it, they're here. Nye Tian's face darkened when he saw the black-clothed referee. Then, the void shook continuously and dozens of black-clothed figures appeared. Each of them had a powerful aura. They were the Shura secret guards. Xian Zongfeng in front and the Shura secret guards behind. Chapter 2149. *T. Nye Tian looked at Xian Zongfeng, then at the black-clothed referee and the others. His face darkened. There were wolves in front and tigers in the back, and they could not advance or retreat. The most troublesome thing was that both Nye Tian and Mizuhara Kaori were seriously injured, and the lunar evil seal in Gale Xiao Zhao's body was activated at this time. This put them on the brink of death. Xian Zongfeng frowned and took a few steps back when he saw the black-clothed referee and dozens of Shura shadow guards suddenly charging at him. He could tell at a glance that these people were from the Dark Azura field. Judging from their posture, they seemed to be here to kill Nye Tian and the others. Did these brats offend the Dark Azura field? Xian Zongfeng's heart sank and he frowned. His strength was more than enough to deal with one Shura shadow guard alone, but he was no match for dozens of Shura shadow guards. More importantly, the Dark Moon Divine sect was much weaker than the Dark Knight Azura arena. Therefore, Xian Zongfeng did not dare to offend these people. Who are you? The black-clothed referee saw Xian Zongfeng and asked in a cold tone. I am the deputy sect leader of the Dark Moon sect, Xian Zongfeng. Xian Zongfeng did not dare to be arrogant and said honestly, Sir, did these brats offend the Dark Azura field? It was his first time seeing so many Shura shadow guards at the same time, so he was very surprised and could not help but ask. Scram! The black-clothed referee completely ignored Xian Zongfeng and roared. Xian Zongfeng frowned and looked a little embarrassed. He was obviously very angry, but he did not dare to show it. He could only bow slightly and retreat tens of thousands of meters away. Nie Tian's eyes flickered when he saw Xian Zongfeng retreat, and he looked at the black-clothed referee. "Brat, hand over Her Highness!" At that moment, a violent roar came from the void, and then a black-clothed figure appeared. His aura was extremely powerful, and the surrounding space trembled slightly. What a powerful aura! Nie Tian's expression changed, and he suddenly looked at the person. He used his divine sense to sense it and exclaimed in his heart. The aura of the man in black was extremely strong, even more terrifying than Xian Zongfeng. Just as the black-clothed man landed, another 3 black-clothed cultivators appeared. Their eyes were bloodshot as they glared at Nie Tian. Not good, they are Yin Jianyue's guards. Gale Xiao Zhao's eyes trembled when he saw the 4 people, and he exclaimed, "My lord, Her Royal Highness was captured by this brat." The black-clothed referee looked at the leader of the black-clothed men and said respectfully, "I know." The man in black roared and took a step forward. His whole body's aura was like a stormy sea, pressing down on Nie Tian. He roared, "Brat, hand over Her Royal Highness!" Boom! In the blink of an eye, a terrifying pressure came crashing down on Nie Tian's body. His body swayed and he almost fell to the ground. The strength of this black-clothed man was extremely terrifying. He was definitely a peak paramount god expert, and his battle prowess was no weaker than the peak experts of the 9 realms. Under normal circumstances, Nie Tian's martial physique would be able to withstand this person's pressure. But now Nie Tian was seriously injured, and his martial physique was weak. It was impossible for him to withstand such a terrifying pressure. Puff! Nie Tian's body trembled, and he vomited a mouthful of blood. He took a few steps back and almost fell to the ground. "Nie Tian!" Mizuhara Kaori exclaimed. She stepped forward and supported Nie Tian with one arm. "I'm fine." Nie Tian struggled to stand, and he wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. Although he said he was fine, his face was as pale as a sheet. At this moment, he was in a state of exhaustion, and he could pass out at any time. "Brat, you have one last chance. Hand over Her Royal Highness!" roared the black-clothed man. His aura suddenly surged again, turning into a tremendous pressure that surged through the air. He was Yin Xianyue's bodyguard. If Yin Xianyue was captured, it would be his greatest dereliction of duty. He could not allow such a thing to happen. He was very surprised. Nie Tian was clearly only a late overgod, so how could he capture Yin Xianyue, who was a late paramount god? But that was not important. What was important was that he had to make Nie Tian hand over Yin Xianyue. Yin Xianyue is indeed in my hands. Nie Tian looked at the black-clothed man with a dark and cold expression. His lips curled into a strange smile. "However, I don't plan on handing her over. Brat, don't test my patience. If I wanted to kill you, you would already be a corpse." The black-clothed man's eyes flickered. He clearly did not expect Nie Tian to remain so calm in front of him. "Now I'll ask you again, Your Royal Highness. Are you going to hand her over or not?" The black-clothed man took a step forward. His aura surged through the air like a fierce beast. With a single thought, he could directly kill Nie Tian. With his strength, he could indeed kill Nie Tian in an instant. But he did not dare to take the risk because Yin Xianyue was still in Nie Tian's hands. "No." Nie Tianling refused flatly. He said in a deep voice, "You can ask me 100 times, but I still won't hand her over. You can kill me, but let me tell you, if I die, Yin Xianyue won't live either." The black-clothed man frowned. His eyes trembled violently. He was obviously furious, but his reason told him not to be impulsive. In his opinion, Nie Tian was just an insignificant ant, but Yin Xianyue's life was very important. Xianwei was the eldest princess of the Moon dynasty, and she was also known as the number one genius of the Moon royal family in a million years. If she died, it would not only be a humiliation to the Moon royal family, but also a provocation to the entire Moon dynasty. Brat, what do you want in order to let Her Royal Highness go? The black-clothed man took a deep breath. His aura dissipated in an instant. He said in a deep voice, I can assure you that as long as you let Her Royal Highness go, I can let you leave alive. His original intention was not to kill Nie Tian, but to scare the latter. But he did not expect that Nie Tian would be so calm and not fall for his trick at all. Since the hard way won't work, you want to use the soft way? Nie Tian smiled faintly and said, Your conditions are indeed tempting, but why should I believe you? In fact, just now, Nie Tian also took a gamble. He bet that the black-clothed man would not dare to take Xianyue's life as a joke. As expected, he won the gamble. I, Wanshan, am a man of my words. Why would I lie to you? The black-clothed man roared angrily and shouted his own name. Is that so? Nie Tian smiled faintly and said in his heart, Wanshan, do you really think I'm a 3-year-old child? Your eyes tell me that you won't lie to me, but you will definitely lie to me. At this moment, Wanshan's state was close to madness. His eyes were bloodshot, and it was obvious that he was suppressing the killing intent in his heart. Without a doubt, as long as Nie Tian handed over Xianyue, he would definitely kill Nie Tian. Chapter 2150. Wanshan's methods might be able to trick kids, but it was impossible for him to trick Nie Tian. Mizuhara Kaori, is Elder Ming here soon? Nie Tian asked Mizuhara Kaori through telepathy. Soon. Mizuhara Kaori nodded her head with unconcealable nervousness on her face. When Xian Zongfeng injured Mizuhara Kaori, Nie Tian had secretly asked Mizuhara Kaori to seek help from Ming Jianyu. Ming Jianyu and Mizuhara Kaori were master and disciple, so they had a special method of communication. Furthermore, Nie Tian and the rest were not far from Zhuozhuo's residence. The reason why Nie Tian was talking nonsense with Wanshan was to buy time and wait for Ming Jianyu's arrival. Kid, have you made up your mind? Wanshan could not help but urge Nie Tian when he saw that Nie Tian was not speaking. Sure, I can let Xianyue go. Nie Tian smiled faintly and said, but I want all of you to retreat 50,000 meters away. Wanshan's eyes darkened and his expression changed as he roared, Brat, you're fooling me. Lord this kid doesn't dare to kill Princess Royal, he's buying time. At the same time, the black-clothed judge realized what was going on and shouted anxiously. The black-clothed judge suddenly recalled that when Nie Tian was in the Azura arena, he had the chance to kill Xianyue, but he did not do so. Didn't this mean that Nie Tian didn't dare to kill Xianyue? After understanding this, the black-clothed judge's face darkened and he shouted, Everyone, listen up! Kill this kid! Yes. Dozens of Azura hidden guards responded in unison with an imposing manner. Brat, how dare you fool me, you deserve to die! Wanshan's face darkened as he let out a roar. The aura around his body instantly skyrocketed. Waves of pressure gushed over like a flood, pressing down on Nie Tian and the rest. At this moment, as long as Wanshan's aura descended, Nie Tian and the rest would die for sure. However, Nie Tian's expression was extremely calm because he had already sensed Ming Jianyu's aura. Boom! An enormous pressure surged forth like 10,000 bolts of lightning. Just as the terrifying power was about to land on Nie Tian and the others, a white light suddenly appeared in the void. In an instant, it descended and turned into a white shield of light, wrapping Nie Tian and the others up. Buzz! The next moment the enormous pressure descended, but it was actually absorbed by the white light shield. It did not cause any damage to Nie Tian and the others. Who's there? Wanshan was startled by the scene in front of him as he let out a weird cry. A figure appeared in the sky and landed beside Nie Tian and the others. Old Ming, you're finally here. Nie Tian smiled faintly when he saw the person who had arrived. His heart that had been hanging in suspense finally relaxed. Ming Jinyu arrived at the most crucial moment and saved Nie Tian and the others. Since Ming Jinyu had appeared, it was impossible for them to attack Nie Tian and the others at night. Nie Tian, are you guys alright? Ming Jinyu's expression sank as he swept his gaze across Nie Tian and the others. Old Ming, we're fine. Nie Tian smiled faintly. The three of them were severely injured, but fortunately, their lives were not in danger. Let's go. Ming Jinyu did not even look at Yin Wanshan and the others. He treated them as if they did not exist and turned around, preparing to leave. Yin Wanshan was stunned for a moment before he reacted and shouted, "Who are you? Do you know that they have captured the crown princess of the Inu Empire? If you take them away, you'll be making an enemy out of the Inu Empire. You should know how terrifying the Inu Empire is. Therefore, I advise you not to interfere in this matter." Yin Wanshan knew that he was no match for Ming Jinyu, so he could only bring up the Inu Empire in hopes of scaring the latter. Although his voice was loud, it was clearly lacking in confidence. Scram! Ming Jinyu's figure paused for a moment before he turned around abruptly. He took a step forward and roared furiously. Instantly, a terrifying ray of light appeared and charged towards Yin Wanshan and the others. Boom! In an instant, Yin Wanshan and the others felt a majestic force appearing, which forced them to retreat. After they managed to stabilize themselves, they spurted out a mouthful of blood. This! Yin Wanshan was stunned. He was so shocked that he could not speak a word. He had never expected the other party to be so terrifying as to attack them directly. Half-Saint expert. At this moment, he was sure that Ming Jinyu was a half-Saint expert. How could he have imagined that there was a half-Saint expert behind Nie Tian and the others? Who exactly are you? Yin Wanshan steadied himself and forcefully suppressed the shock in his heart as he asked with a trembling voice. Now, can we leave? Ming Jinyu completely ignored Yin Wanshan's question and asked in a cold manner. Yin Wanshan's Adam's apple trembled as his eyes were filled with fear. Let me ask you, can we leave now? Suddenly, Ming Jinyu roared furiously once more, and his voice rumbled like thunder. Yin Wanshan's body shuddered and his body was drenched in cold sweat. He said with a trembling voice, "Yes, yes, we can." "That's good." Ming Jinyu sneered and turned around to leave with Nie Tian and the others. Yin Wanshan and the others could only stare at the figures in the sky, but they did not dare to stop them. A half-Saint expert was too terrifying. He was not someone they could fight against. It was not an exaggeration to say that if Ming Jinyu had wanted to kill someone, everyone here would have died. The power of a half-saint was so powerful. "Lord Yin, are you all right?" After a long while, after confirming that Ming Jinyu and the others had left, the black-clothed judge cautiously walked forward and asked nervously. I'm fine." Yin Wanshan wiped the cold sweat off his forehead and still had a frightened look on his face. Bastard! In the next moment, Yin Wanshan suddenly reacted and roared, "They dared to kidnap Her Highness. Do they really think that our Inu Empire is a pushover? Lord Yin, these people have obviously planned this for a long time to kidnap Her Highness. Now that a half-saint expert has appeared, this matter is definitely not simple." The black-clothed judge stared at Yin Wanshan strangely and said in a deep voice, "Nonsense." Yin Wanshan let out a furious roar. His eyes flickered with a cold light as he said, "I'll return to Inua City now and report everything to the Emperor. This matter is definitely not simple. There must be a great force behind it. And the people of the Swift Wind tribe don't even think about escaping." "Yes." The black-clothed judge nodded his head and said, "Don't worry, Lord. The Dark Knight Azura Arena will not stand idly by. I'm guessing that the people who kidnapped Her Highness must still be in Dark Knight City. Once there's any news, we'll immediately send someone to inform the Inu Empire." "All right." Yin Wanshan nodded his head heavily. He did not stay any longer and left with the other three. The black-clothed judge looked in the direction where Yin Wanshan had left and his brows were knitted even tighter. Chapter 2151. Ming Jinyu brought Nie Tian and the rest back to Zhuozhuo's residence. Nie Tian, are you all right? Ming Jinyu's gaze swept across Nie Tian and the rest with a nervous expression. I'm fine. Nie Tian smiled and nodded. He had expended too much energy and the dragon vein in his body was slightly damaged, but he would recover after some rest. Mizuhara Koori's arm was severed by Xianzongfeng, but it would take some time for her arm to regrow. Gale Xiao, on the other hand, was in a critical situation due to the lunar evil seal in his body acting up. Gale! Zhuozhuo appeared at this moment and screamed in fear when she saw Gale Xiao's face turning red and black rune aura gushing out from his body. Old thing! Gale Xiao called out when he saw Zhuozhuo. His body swayed and he fainted. Quick, help him into the inner hall. Zhuozhuo said anxiously. Nie Tian carried Gale Xiao and followed Zhuozhuo to a room in the inner hall. Nie Tian, leave first. I need to check on his injuries. Zhuozhuo waved her hand and gestured for Nie Tian to leave. Nie Tian did not stay and returned to the inner hall. He was worried about Nie Yuro and quickly took out 9 extremities and asked Rui Qianyu, Nie Yuro, Yin Xianyue and the rest to come out. Yin Xianyue had already fainted, but his breathing was very stable. She was too noisy, so I put her in a coma. Rui Qianyu looked at Yin Xianyue and said with a frown. Nie Tian nodded and looked at Nie Yuro, asking with a gloomy expression, Ro, why are you here? Where's Enai Jianming? When Nie Tian and Nie Yuro separated, the latter had left with Enai Jianming. At that time, Nie Tian specifically told Enai Jianming to take good care of Nie Yuro, regardless of whether the latter was Enai Jianming or Sacred Lord Mysterious Dragon. Now, Nie Yuro had appeared alone in the Forsaken Land, and had even become someone else's martial slave. How could Nie Tian not be angry? Big Brother Nie Tian, I, Jianming, and Big Brother Di she originally came here together, but when we passed through that spatial passageway, we got separated. I don't even know where they are right now. Nie Yuro said nervously, tears welling up in her eyes. She was already an adult, but in front of Nie Tian, she still couldn't help but act like a little girl. I see. Nie Tian furrowed his brow and let out a deep breath. With Nie Yuro's current state, he really couldn't say anything more. Following that, Nie Tian asked a few other questions, and Nie Yuro answered all of them. From Nie Yuro, Nie Tian found out that with the help of Enai Jianming, Di Shi had already regained his dragon form. The reason why Enai Jianming and the others had come to the abandoned land was because the guardian family was in the abandoned land. But when they entered the abandoned land, perhaps because the spatial passageway was unstable, Nie Yuro and Enai Jianming were separated. Later, Nie Yuro was alone in the abandoned land, captured by Yin Xia's people, and became the latter's martial slave. Fortunately, when she was in the Dark Night Azura field, she met Nie Tian. So the legendary guardian family is actually in the abandoned land. After listening to Nie Yuro's story, Nie Tian couldn't help but tremble, and there was an unconcealable heat in his eyes. He never imagined that the guardian family would actually be in the abandoned land. He already knew that the guardian family was established to protect the dragon spring vein, but later on, the guardian family broke up with him. Nie Tian had already met Huadong and obtained half of the dragon spring vein. As long as he obtained the other half, he would be able to fuse it into a complete dragon spring vein. However, to obtain the other half of the dragon spring vein would not be easy. Because according to Huadong, the other half of the dragon spring vein was divided into 5 parts, and hidden in 5 different places. And more importantly, the other guardian families wanted to take possession of the dragon spring vein. Even if he found these families, they would not hand over the spirit dragon king ring to Nie Tian. Right now Enai Jianming and Big Brother Di Shi are in the abandoned land, right? Nie Tian became cold and asked. Nie Yuro nodded, and her expression suddenly became very anxious. She said, "Big brother Nyetian, I don't know how Jiaming and big brother Di Shi are. Let's go find them now." "Rower, don't worry." Nyetian thought for a moment and said, "I will definitely take you to find them, but not now. I still have some things to deal with here. Once I'm done with them, I will immediately take you to find them. Before we find them, stay by my side." Nyeyuro looked at Nyetian. There was no better way, so she could only nod in agreement. "Qianye, you go back to the 9 superbs first. I'll have to trouble you to take care of Ro." Nyetian looked at Rui Qianyu and nodded. Rui Qianyu agreed and entered the 9 superbs with Nyeyuro. Nyetian arranged for Nyeyuro, but his face was filled with unconcealable worry. Jiaming came to the Forsaken Land with Di Shi in order to find the dragon's spring vein. The current Jiaming had recovered a lot of his memories from his previous life. He must have gone to find the guardian families. But he had no idea that the guardian families had long since betrayed him and wanted to take the dragon's spring vein for themselves. It would be fine if Jiaming did not find the guardian families, but once he did, he would be in danger. Nyetian wanted to find Jiaming and tell him everything, but he really could not leave. Dishir Tian and Jian Qinqi were still reconstructing their bodies, and Gale Xiaoxiao's matter was not over yet. If he left at this time, it would be unreasonable. What was more troublesome was that he did not know how to find Jiaming and the others. He did not even know how big the abandoned land was, but he estimated that the entire abandoned land was definitely not smaller than a domain. Trying to find a person in such a big place was like looking for a needle in a haystack. "Don't worry too much. Let's settle the matter in front of us first." Nyetian's mind was in a mess. He did not think too much and prepared to deal with the matter in front of him first. Next, Nyetian rested for a while and his complexion gradually recovered. After a while, Zhuozhuo and Gale Xiaoxiao walked out. "Gale Xiaoxiao, are you all right?" Nyetian was worried about Gale Xiaoxiao's safety and asked nervously. "I won't die for the time being." Gale Xiaoxiao forced a smile and immediately saw Jianwei on the ground. His face sank and his eyes trembled violently. He said in a cold voice, "Jianwei." Sigh. Zhuozhuo also saw Jianwei at this time and could not help but let out a long sigh. The woman in front of him was his former disciple. Chapter 2152. Jianwei. Gale Xiaoxiao's eyes became even more furious when he saw that Jianwei had woken up. He growled, wishing he could tear Jianwei apart alive. It was this woman who caused him to lose everything. At this moment, facing the person who had caused his life's tragedy, how could he not be angry? Gale Xiaoxiao. Jianwei's pupils constricted, as if he had just woken up from a dream. What do you want?" "What do I want?" Gale Xiaoxiao grinned and said in a deep voice, "Jianwei, you've caused me so much suffering. What do you think I should do?" "You want to kill me?" Jianwei struggled to stand up. He slowly calmed down and asked with a frown. "Kill you? Don't you think that's too easy for you?" Gale Xiaoxiao's eyes were cold as he yelled, "Jianwei, I just want to ask you, why do you want to harm me? Why? What have I, Gale Xiaoxiao, done to you?" These words and questions had been suppressed in Gale Xiaoxiao's heart for a long time. Now that they were spoken, he roared at the top of his voice. However, Jianwei's reaction was very indifferent. He laughed and looked at Gale Xiaoxiao. "Gale Xiaoxiao, you didn't do anything to me. It's just that I don't want to be with you." "Marriage contract." Gale Xiaoxiao was taken aback. He said with a pained expression, "Just because we have a marriage contract and you don't want to be with me, you framed me. If you don't want to be with me, just say so. I, Gale Xiaoxiao, will not pester you shamelessly. Why? Why do you want to harm me with such a vicious method?" After saying that, Gale Xiaoxiao stared at Jianwei because he wanted to get an answer from the latter. However, Jianwei was very indifferent. He laughed again and said, Gale Xiaoxiao, you took such a big risk just to ask why? If that's the case, you're too naive. Do you know how big a crime it is to kidnap the eldest princess of the Inu Empire? Can you bear the consequences? Can your Gale clan bear the consequences? Do you know that your actions will bring a calamity upon the Galewind clan? As Yin Xie spoke, he looked coldly at Gale Xiaoxiao with a domineering attitude. I don't care. Gale Xiaoxiao was completely enraged. He bellowed, I just want to know why you framed me back then. Sorry, I won't tell you the reason. Yin Xianhui sneered and said arrogantly, but let me tell you, if you capture me, you will not only offend the Inu Empire, but also an even more powerful force. Your Swift Wind tribe is destined to be exterminated because of this. As soon as he uttered the word extermination, Yin Jiue's eyes were filled with extreme coldness. I don't believe it. Gale let out a small cry and said, I don't believe that the Inu Empire would dare to exterminate our Gale clan for you. You don't believe me? Yin Jianhua let out a laugh and said in a provocative tone, Gale Xiaoxiao, you're too stupid. You have no idea who's behind this princess. Enough! At this moment, an angry roar sounded. Zhuozhuo walked up and said coldly, Yin Xianhua, I don't care who's behind you. I just want to tell you that the Swift Wind tribe cannot be exterminated. If you think that Gale Xiaoxiao has committed a great crime, then I will bear his crime. Teacher! Gale Xiaoxiao was taken aback and said in astonishment. He did not expect Zhuozhuo to say such a thing at this time. At this time, Yin Xianhua looked at Zhuozhuo and was stunned for a moment. Finally recognizing the latter's identity, he could not help but smile and said, So it's Master Zhuozhuo, my dear teacher. I really didn't expect to meet you here. I finally understand why that idiot Gale Xiaoxiao could live for so long. It turns out that you're the one who helped him. But it seems that even an omnipotent master like you can't do anything about the Inu demonic seal. Otherwise, you might have been struck by the Inu demonic seal yourself. Zhuozhuo's appearance had changed so much that Yin Xianhui did not recognize her at first, and only managed to do so now. Yin Xianhui, at least you still remember me, your teacher. Zhuozhuo sneered and said, I watched you grow up, but I didn't expect that you would become like this. I, Zhuozhuo, have eyes but failed to see. How could I have accepted you as my disciple? Humph! The corner of Yin Xianhui's mouth twitched and he sneered. Zhuozhuo, you can be considered as someone who has done me a favor and is very famous in the entire Forsaken Land. But look at yourself now, you don't look like a human and you don't look like a ghost. Why bother humiliating yourself like this? How about this, as long as you are willing to submit to me, I will plead for you in front of Imperial Father and let him remove the Inu demonic seal in your body. From now on, you will obediently stay by this princess's side and be a dog. It's much better than what you are now. With that, Yin Xianhui's attitude became even more arrogant, and his eyes were cold and contemptuous, as if he was bestowing a favor to Zhuozhuo. Yin Xianhui, you. When Zhuozhuo heard Yin Xianhui's words, her chest couldn't help but tighten, and she couldn't speak. As the saying goes, a teacher for a day is a father for life. Yin Xianhui actually wanted Zhuozhuo to be a dog by his side. How could she say such disobedient words? Zhuozhuo, are you not convinced? Don't tell me you. Yin Xianhui sneered and wanted to say something, but he was directly interrupted. Pa. Yin Xianhui had only said half of her words when a clear slap sounded, and half of her face directly swelled up. Nie Tian, you, how dare you? Yin Xianhui suddenly turned around and looked at Nie Tian incredulously, unable to believe his eyes. Pa. Without waiting for Yin Xianhui to finish, a second slap sounded. Nie Tian had no interest in listening to Yin Xianhui's nonsense. Bastard, I am the Princess Royal of the Yin Moon Empire, how dare you? Yin Xianhui's eyes trembled, and a sharp roar came from her throat. Pa, pa, pa. But what greeted her was a series of slaps, and she never had a chance to finish her words. After a dozen slaps in a row, Nye Tian finally stopped, a pair of eyes glowing with a smug light, and said lightly, "Princess Royal Insienue, if you have anything to say now, you can say it." Nye Tian, you. What? Insienue's both sides of her face were swollen high, and traces of blood were clearly visible. She looked at Nye Tian like a child who had been wronged, unable to speak, and burst into tears. She was the Princess Royal of the In Moon Empire. She was the most monstrous genius of the In Moon imperial family. From childhood to adulthood, she was spoiled and respected, and had never suffered the slightest grievance. But today, she was slapped a dozen times in a row, and the other party didn't even give her a chance to speak. Such humiliation made Insienue directly collapse. Chapter 2153. After slapping In Shiyu a dozen times in a row, Nye Tian immediately felt much better. People like In Shiyu were a classic example of a hypocrite. The more you appeared weak in front of such people, the more arrogant and despotic they would be. The best way to deal with such people was, "You may be arrogant, but I will be even more arrogant than you." At this time, Gale Xiao Xiao, Zhuo Zhuo, Ming Jianyu, and Mizuhara Kaori were all stunned. They looked at Nye Tian in disbelief, and were speechless for a long time. They obviously didn't expect that Nye Tian would treat a princess so ruthlessly. In any case, In Shiyu was the eldest princess of the Inu Empire, and being slapped like this was really vicious. What was even more unexpected was that after a dozen slaps, the arrogant In Shiyu was beaten to tears. "Why are you looking at me? Is there a problem with me slapping her?" Nye Tian asked with a faint smile and raised his eyebrows. "No, no problem." Ming Jianyu was the first to react and said with a dry laugh. The others also shook their heads, trying hard to hold in their laughter, as if they were about to burst out in the next moment. "Laugh if you want to, it's so uncomfortable to hold it in." "Ha ha." Nye Tian shook his head and was the first to laugh. "Ha ha." Then Gale Xiao Xiao and the others also laughed. In Shiyu looked at the crowd and felt even more ashamed. She wanted to find a hole to hide in. Never in her wildest dreams did she imagine that she would be humiliated like this one day. Now, she even had the intention to eat Nye Tian alive. "In Shiyu, I know what you are thinking. Don't you hate me and want to kill me?" After laughing enough, Nye Tianling looked at In Shiyu coldly and said, "But unfortunately, you will never have the chance to kill me. And let me tell you, everything you've endured today, you asked for it. Gale Xiao Xiao is your fiancé, but you framed him. This is disloyalty. Master Zhuo Zhuo is your teacher, but you scolded him. This is unfilial. Disloyal and unfilial people like you deserve to be beaten. You." In Xianhua looked at Nye Tian and was about to speak, but he thought of something and swallowed his words. Her words might be able to threaten Gale Xiao Xiao and Zhuo Zhuo, but they were completely useless against Nye Tian. At most, they would receive a few loud slaps. "In Jianhua, if you don't want to tell us why you framed Gale Xiao Xiao back then forget it. We'll find out ourselves." Nye Tian smiled faintly, then raised his hand and sent out a powerful force. In Jianhua didn't even have time to react before he fainted. Then, Nye Tian stored In Attack Moon into the 9 extremities. In Shiyu's injuries were so severe that he was no different from a cripple, so Nye Tian could safely place him among the 9 superbs. "Nye Tian, you." Gale Xiao Zhao's face stiffened when he saw Nye Tian storing In Jianhua away. "Gale Xiao Xiao, In Jianhua won't tell you why. Asking her is just a waste of time." Nye Tian waved his hand and said, "Gale Xiao, Nye Tian is right. In Jianhua is too cunning. She won't tell you the reason." Zhuo Zhuo also said. Gale Xiao Xiao had no choice but to give up. "Teacher, I have to go back to my family now. In Jianhua has been captured, and the Inua royal family will definitely cause trouble for the Gale clan. I have to inform father in advance and let them know what happened." Gale Xiao Xiao suddenly said. "No need." Zhuo Zhuo stopped him and said, "The Inua royal family won't go to the Gale clan. They will come here." "Here? Why?" Gale Xiao Xiao was stunned and asked. Zhuo Zhuo smiled bitterly. She looked at Gale Xiao Xiao and said, Gale boy, you're oversimplifying this matter. You've captured Yin Jianyue. This is a provocation to the entire Yingyue dynasty. It's even a declaration of war. It's impossible to contend against the Yingyue Empire with just the power of your Swift Wind clan. The Gale clan won't be able to handle this matter. Gale was taken aback for a moment. Then, his eyes trembled as fear appeared in his eyes. He asked in astonishment, Then what should we do? Zhuo Zhuo took a deep breath and patted Gale Xiao Zhao's shoulder. Gale boy, I won't be your teacher for nothing. I've already said that no matter what happens, I'll take care of it for you as your teacher. I've already removed the barrier here. It won't take long for the Yingyue dynasty to find this place. I think your father and the elders of your clan will also come here. At that time, I'll personally face Yin Buxiu. Leave everything to me. Zhuo Zhuo's lips curled into a smile. Her face was full of confidence. Teacher, this. Gale Xiao Xiao was stunned and didn't know what to say. Zhuo Zhuo smiled and said, Don't worry. Since Yin Jianyue isn't dead, I think Yin Buxiu will give me face and stop this matter. Yin Buxiu was the name of the Yingyue emperor. What if he doesn't stop? Gale Xiao Zhao's eyes trembled. It's fine if he doesn't stop. Zhuo Zhuo smiled faintly. Although I've taught a failed disciple, I've also made many friends. I've already informed a friend. He should be here soon. As long as he's here, Yin Buxiu will stop even if he doesn't want to. Gale Xiao Zhao's eyes trembled. He was extremely shocked. He really couldn't think of who was so terrifying that he could force the entire Yingyue dynasty to give in by himself. However, he believed Zhuo Zhuo's words. But at this moment, Nie Tian's expression didn't look good. Nie Tian, what are you thinking about? Zhuo Zhuo noticed Nie Tian and couldn't help but ask. Nie Tian frowned, thought for a moment and said, Master Zhuo Zhuo, I don't think this matter is so simple. Yin Jianyue just said that capturing her will not only offend the Yingyue dynasty, but also an even more powerful force. I'm worried that there's an even more terrifying force behind Yin Jianyue. If this force intervenes, things will be very troublesome. Zhuo Zhuo was stunned for a moment. His eyes revealed an unconcealable worry, but then he laughed and said, Maybe Yin Jianyue is just threatening us and lying casually. Nie Tian twitched the corner of his mouth, but didn't speak. He didn't think Yin Jianyue was the kind of person who would lie casually. He felt that the more powerful force mentioned by Yin Jianyue really existed, and he had an intuition that the person behind this force would definitely intervene in this matter. If this was really the case, the person invited by Zhuo Zhuo might not be able to settle the situation. At the same time, Nie Tian was still worried that the Dark Azura field would also intervene in this matter. Chapter 2154. In the inner hall, Nie Tian's face was filled with worry, but he didn't show it on his face. With the current situation, it was useless to worry too much. He could only act according to the situation. Grandmaster Zhuo Zhuo, is Gale Xiao Xiao all right? Nie Tian looked at Gale Xiao Xiao and asked worriedly. Zhuo Zhuo shook his head helplessly. I have temporarily suppressed the Yingyue evil seal, but this is not a long-term solution. To break the seal, only the Yingyue emperor can do it himself. Zhuo Zhuo had done his best to help Gale Xiao Xiao, but he still couldn't break the Yingyue evil seal. He estimated that if the Yingyue evil seal acted up again, Gale Xiao Xiao would be in danger. There was only one way to save Gale Xiao Xiao, and that was for the Yingyue emperor to remove the evil seal. Unfortunately, the Yingyue emperor couldn't do that. This life of mine should have died a long time ago. I've already lived for so long. I'm satisfied. Gale let out a small laugh. However, it was a very bitter laugh. Sigh. Zhuo Zhuo sighed, feeling ashamed. He had the title of Grandmaster, but he couldn't do anything to the Yingyue evil seal. Master Zhuo Zhuo, how are my two friends? Nie Tian was worried about Sakura and Jian Qinqi, so he couldn't help but ask. Don't worry, They are currently in the formation arranged by this Grandmaster. The dragon's spring vein is helping them reconstruct their bodies. At most 1 month, at least half a month, they will be back to normal. Zhuozhuo smiled faintly, appearing very confident. That's good. Nie Tian nodded. He originally wanted to ask Indra, but he decided not to. He had already noticed that Zhuozhuo's attitude towards Indra was a bit strange, as if he had seen something from him. However, Zhuozhuo didn't say anything, so Nie Tian didn't ask too much. At this time, Zhuozhuo's expression suddenly changed, and he asked with a strange expression, Nie Tian, I have a question, but I don't know if I should ask? Grandmaster Zhuozhuo doesn't need to be so polite. If you have a question, just say it. Nie Tian replied with a faint smile. Zhuozhuo's eyes narrowed as she hesitated for a moment before she asked, I want to know, where did you get your dragon spring vein? Hearing Zhuozhuo's question about the dragon spring vein, Nie Tian couldn't help being stunned for a moment. Shortly after, he smiled and said, Master Zhuozhuo, do you have a good understanding of the dragon spring vein? I don't know much about it, but I've heard some rumors. Zhuozhuo awkwardly smiled and said, I heard that the dragon spring vein was once a sacred object of the divine dragon clan, but it was later lost and is now in the custody of an organization called the Guardian Clan. You know about the Protector Clan? Nie Tian couldn't help but frown when he heard Zhuozhuo mention the Protector Clan. Yes. Zhuozhuo's eyes trembled as she stared at Nie Tian with a burning gaze, seemingly observing the latter's reaction. She said, The Guardian Clan is a mysterious organization in the Forsaken Land, and most people don't know of its existence. Even those who know about the Guardian family have only heard of it. They have never seen the Guardian family. Therefore, no one knows whether the Guardian clans really exist. You have the dragon spring vein on you, so I'm a bit curious. Nie Tian looked at Zhuozhuo and smiled faintly. Master Zhuozhuo, do you think I'm a member of the Guardian clan? Although Zhuozhuo didn't say it out loud, Nie Tian could hear that she was obviously suspicious of this. Are you not? Zhuozhuo was taken aback and asked in return. Of course not. Nie Tian shook his head. To tell you the truth, I'm also searching for the Guardian clan. However, there are some things that I can't say. Please forgive me, Master Zhuozhuo. Zhuozhuo nodded and smiled faintly. She didn't ask any further and said, The people of the Inua Empire will definitely find this place in a few days. We just need to wait quietly. Rest well these few days and recover your strength. Nie Tian and the others agreed and returned to their respective rooms. In the room, Nie Tian sat cross-legged and prepared to enter a state of cultivation. However, at this moment, he suddenly sensed a weak presence, which made him frown involuntarily. Who's there? Nie Tian growled out almost instinctively. Afterwards, he expanded the senses of his soul and sensed everything within a range of 10,000 meters. However, strangely, he actually sensed nothing. The presence seemed to have vanished. Nie Tian frowned. He shook his head with a bitter smile and said, Am I just too nervous and hallucinating? Kid, you're a late overgod. Do you still believe in hallucinations at that level of cultivation? However, at this moment, a powerful voice actually rang out in his head. It was like a clap of thunder, causing him to jolt and directly stand up. Who's there? Nie Tian growled out once again. He could not help but tense up. The person had actually appeared here without anyone noticing, which meant that they were extremely powerful. Even more terrifyingly, Nie Tian activated the holographic divine glyph and carefully sensed everything around him, but he discovered nothing. The person seemed to have fused with space. His presence originated from space itself. Don't be nervous. I'm just a bored person who wants to play a game with you, the powerful voice rang out once again. It was actually very playful. It said, Kid, how about it? Are you interested? Play a game? Nie Tian was taken aback. His face stiffened. Clearly, he became even more nervous. Just who was this person who had suddenly appeared? He could actually avoid Ming Jianyu and Zhua's senses and directly communicate with Nie Tian. No matter who this person was, he was definitely abnormally powerful. "Sir, who are you? We don't know each other, so why do you want to find me?" Nie Tian sucked in a deep breath and forced himself to calm down as he asked sternly. "Are you rejecting my invitation?" The person's voice was cold. Immediately, Nie Tian felt a tremendous pressure from the surrounding space, as if it wanted to rip his body apart. "Your strength far surpasses mine, but you want to force me to do something I'm not willing to do? Impossible." Nie Tian frowned. Immediately, astral energy surged out from his body in an attempt to break through the pressure from the space. However, in the next moment, something strange happened. The astral energy that Nie Tian had unleashed was directly absorbed by the space. He could feel the energy in his body disappearing at a rapid pace. Damn it! In an instant, he felt something was amiss. His expression changed drastically as he cursed. "Kid, your strength is not worth mentioning in front of me. I advise you to give up resisting and obediently play the game with me." The mysterious person smiled proudly, as if torturing Nie Tian made him very happy. "Don't even think about it." Nie Tian let out an angry roar. The 9 dragon veins in his body began to circulate rapidly, emitting streams of dragon qi. Chapter 2155. How is this possible? Nie Tian was dumbfounded. His face was filled with utter astonishment. He had never seen such a law-defying method, to be able to absorb all kinds of energy using the space. "Kid, don't resist. I'm not your enemy, I won't hurt you." The mysterious man spoke once again. "Besides, you're the first person in this world who has the chance to play a game with me. Your strength is indeed very strong. If you want to play a game with me, it's not impossible. However, you have to answer a question of mine first." Nie Tian frowned. After calming down a little, he asked in a deep voice, "Who are you?" "That's not a funny question, I won't answer it." The mysterious man burst out laughing and said, "Kid, since you're so courageous, I guess I'll have to use some forceful methods." Nie Tian's eyes flickered. He suddenly had a feeling that something terrifying was about to happen. Boom! At that instant, the illusionary figure of a giant hand suddenly appeared from the ground, which lifted the room that Nie Tian was in. Instantly, the ground cracked open, causing sand to fly into the air. Nie Tian tried to resist, but he realized that the space around him had turned into an impenetrable wall, preventing him from moving. "What's happening?" At that instant, Ming Jianyu and the others were startled. They were dumbfounded after seeing the scene in the air. In the air, a giant hand was moving a room at a rapid pace. Nie Tian. Ming Jianyu's eyes flickered as he collected his thoughts. He tried to chase after the man, but he realized that a powerful barrier was preventing him from doing so. "Don't be nervous, I'm only playing a game with him. I'll send him back in one piece." The mysterious man's voice could be heard in the air. The giant hand in the air soon disappeared. Ming Jianyu could only watch as Nie Tian was taken away, but there was nothing he could do. At this moment, Nie Tian was still in his room. However, he felt as if the space around him had been locked down and he couldn't move at all. "Bastard, who exactly are you?" He was furious and couldn't help but roar. "Kid, don't get too worked up. I've already told you that I'm just a bored person who wants to play a game with you. That's all." The mysterious man laughed. He lifted the house with his giant hand and soared into the sky. After a while, Nie Tian felt the space around him tremble slightly. Then, the house suddenly shook and collapsed. Only then did he realize that he was already hundreds of thousands of meters in the sky. The surrounding strong winds were like steel blades. Even though Nie Tian's martial body was tyrannical, he still felt the pain of his skin being cut. He looked around. It was quiet and there was no one around. However, he could sense that the mysterious aura was still there. That mysterious person was right beside him, just that he hadn't shown himself. "Who the hell are you?" Nietion endured the pain and bellowed. I've asked this question too many times. Let's change the question. The mysterious man's voice reverberated in the air. It was extremely strange, as if it was coming from all directions. There was no way to determine where he was. Why did you capture me? Nie Tianling asked coldly. He didn't like the feeling of being toyed with. Haven't I already answered this question? I just want to play a game with you. The mysterious man's voice was full of mockery. Nie Tian's eyebrows furrowed, his face extremely grim. He didn't believe that this guy captured him just to play a game. But now, Nie Tian had no other choice. The mysterious man was too strong for him to fight against. Kid, are you ready? The game is about to start. Just at this moment, the mysterious man suddenly laughed. Soon after, numerous golden symbols suddenly appeared in the space. They were burning with scarlet flames, and like many small snakes, they danced crazily. What's this? Nie Tian's expression flickered with astonishment. He felt a terrifying aura from the golden runes. It was as if the runes contained a very mysterious power, violent and hot. The red flames outside the golden runes were even more strange. They were like light and they were flowing with a holy aura. Kid, these runes are good stuff. Next, let's see if your martial body is strong enough. The mysterious voice sounded again. As his voice fell, the golden runes in the air suddenly became violent and they spread towards Nie Tian. Seeing this, Nie Tian's pupils suddenly shrank. He wanted to retreat, but the space around him was extremely powerful, making it very difficult for him to move. Kid, there's no use in running away. Enjoy the taste of the restriction. The mysterious voice sounded very proud. In the next moment, the golden runes attacked. They were like maggots in the tarsal bone, and they drilled into Nie Tian's body. In the blink of an eye, intense pain spread throughout his body. Nie Tian felt like he was in a furnace and his body was about to burn. The great pain was unbearable. But even under such circumstances, he didn't make a sound. Instead, he gritted his teeth and looked into the air. His eyes were bloodshot and it was obvious that he was extremely angry. Kid, scream if it's painful. Don't hold it in. You'll get sick. The mocking voice sounded in the air. The mysterious man was obviously very happy. Impossible! Nie Tian roared. His face was hideous and his body was distorted. But he didn't scream in pain. Although he couldn't see where the mysterious man was, he could feel that the mysterious man was looking at him with his eyes wide open. Therefore, even though he was enduring the pain of being burned by the fire, he definitely wouldn't make a sound. Ha ha ha, you have guts. I like it. The mysterious voice laughed, as if he was very satisfied with Nie Tian's performance. Then, more violent golden runes appeared in the air and drilled into Nie Tian's body. They burned and refined his body. Nie Tian endured the indescribable pain, but his body gradually had an indescribable feeling. It seemed that, under the burning of the golden runes, his martial body was becoming stronger little by little. Kid, it seems that you have already experienced the benefits of the forbidden fire refining. But your martial body is stronger than I thought, so you should be able to withstand more forbidden fire runes. The mysterious man carefully observed Nie Tian's every move. After a chuckle, even more dazzling golden runes appeared in the air. Nie Tian felt the violent aura within the golden runes. He couldn't help but widen his eyes and scream. He couldn't say a word. The next moment, the incomparably violent forbidden fire runes surged into Nie Tian's body. This time, he finally couldn't bear it and screamed. Chapter 2156. The mysterious man looked at Nie Tian. His eyes were very gentle, but there was a clear trace of moisture in his eyes. Ah! At this moment, Nie Tian let out a series of blood-curdling screams. His eyes were bloodshot, and his entire body was on the verge of burning up. The mysterious man looked at Nie Tian in the dark. The corner of his mouth raised into a faint smile and said, "Little guy, what you are going through now is the forbidden fire. This is a necessary method to become an expert. These leaf fire forbidden runes are refined from the leaf fire flames in the deepest part of the leaf fire sea. In order to obtain these leaf fire forbidden runes, I spent thousands of years. I have to say that you appeared at the right time. Otherwise, if the forbidden fire runes were to be used for a long time, the effect wouldn't be so good. So, when your strength increases, you have to thank me properly. Ah. At the end of his words, the mysterious man couldn't help but laugh. He was very satisfied with Nie Tian's talent and performance. He was 100% satisfied. Nie Tian was in great pain. He didn't have the leisure to listen to the mysterious man's nonsense. But he could clearly feel that the power in his body was getting stronger little by little. The process of the forbidden fire runes was more painful than Nie Tian had imagined, and it took longer than he expected. After a full day and night, the flames around Nie Tian's body gradually faded and the pain in his body weakened a lot. Nie Tian's state at this time was completely calm. He felt the changes in his body, and there was an unconcealable joy on his face. He could clearly feel that the blood, meridians, and bones in his body had been greatly strengthened. His martial body had become more powerful than before. "Little guy, how do you feel now?" At this time, the mysterious man's voice sounded again. There was a hint of concern in his tone. "Thank you, Senior." Nie Tian bowed slightly and thanked him sincerely. No matter how stupid he was, he understood that the mysterious man had brought him here to give him a gift. But he really didn't understand why the mysterious man would help him when he didn't know him. "It's good that you know how to say thank you. It means that your brain hasn't been burned by the forbidden fire runes." The mysterious man laughed and said, "Little guy, your martial body is really frighteningly strong. It's even more terrifying than I expected. The fiend god nascent embryo is indeed the #1 taboo. Master, I want to know why you." Nie Tian frowned and was about to ask, but was interrupted by the mysterious man. "Don't ask about me, because I won't answer even if you do. You're too weak now. There are some things you're better off not knowing." The mysterious person directly interrupted Nie Tian. She continued, "You're already a peak over God now. Estimate how powerful you are right now." Nie Tian was taken aback. Afterwards, he sensed his body, and only then did he discover that he was already a peak over God. Unknowingly, his strength had actually increased by a level. He could sense that his aura was so strong that he was on the verge of breaking through to the paramount God level. The forbidden fire runes really were good stuff. They actually allowed Nie Tian to advance by a minor level. Nie Tian thought for a moment, then said honestly, "I'm a peak over God now. My battle prowess should be enough to take on a weaker peak paramount God." He wasn't sure if he could reach the peak paramount God level after using the 3 forbidden arts, so he gave a conservative estimate. "No, I'm asking how strong you are when you don't activate the 3 great forbidden skills in your body." The mysterious man's voice became low as he asked in a deep voice. Nie Tian couldn't help but frown when he heard the mysterious man mention the 3 forbidden arts. He hadn't expected the mysterious man to be able to see through them. "I can probably take on a mid-stage paramount god." Nie Tian nodded slightly. 2 minor levels. That's pretty good." The mysterious man seemed to laugh. Then he said, "Little guy, I'm going to give you a reminder. You have to remember it." Nie Tian's eyes flickered and he couldn't help but feel a bit nervous. The mysterious man's voice grew solemn. "The 3 forbidden arts are a good trump card for you, but you can't overuse them. The only reason you're immune to the backlash of the 3 forbidden arts is because of the tear of the princess. However, the princess tear doesn't belong to you. One day that girl will take it back. The 3 forbidden arts can be used to strengthen your martial body, but you have to use them carefully. Do you understand?" Nie Tian was taken aback upon hearing the mysterious man's words. He hadn't expected that the mysterious man would know about the princess tear. What did the mysterious man mean by saying that the tear of the princess would be taken back? Could it be that Cher would need the tear of the princess one day? I understand, Senior. Nie Tian didn't think too much about it. He bowed and nodded. Then the mysterious man added, and you mustn't use your nascent spirit. Nie Tian frowned, a shocked expression on his face. It was unbelievable that the mysterious man knew about the 9 extremes nascent spirit chaos beast. It was as though he was transparent in front of the mysterious man. He didn't have any secret. Are you wondering why I know you so well? The mysterious man laughed. You don't have to think too much about it. I'll tell you everything when the time is right. Nie Tian frowned and nodded helplessly. The mysterious man was a great mystery to him, but he was completely transparent in the eyes of the mysterious man. This feeling made him a little uncomfortable. All right, you can leave now, the mysterious man said and gestured for Nie Tian to leave. Nie Tian's eyes flickered. Suddenly, he felt that the mysterious aura had disappeared. He asked anxiously, Senior, will we meet again? However, there was only dead silence in the air. There was no response at all. Nie Tian stood there in a daze for a while. He couldn't figure out what had happened today. From the beginning to the end, he only heard the mysterious man's voice. He didn't even see the latter's face. Judging from the aura, the strength of this senior is stronger than Elder Ming. He should be a powerhouse who is infinitely close to the sage. Nie Tian murmured as he recalled the aura from before. So far, this mysterious man should be the strongest person among all the people he had met. He really couldn't understand why this mysterious expert would look for him and even give him such a great benefit. Listening to the mysterious man, it seemed that he had been waiting for Nie Tian. But the strange thing was that this was Nie Tian's first time coming to the abandoned land. Before this, he didn't even know about the existence of the abandoned land. Who is this senior? Nie Tian was puzzled. The more he thought about it, the more he couldn't figure it out. After thinking for a long time, Nie Tian had to give up. Anyway, he already knew about the existence of such a mysterious man. Moreover, the latter was a friend and not an enemy. Chapter 2157. Nie Tian did not think too much about it and returned to Zhuozhua's residence. Elder Ming, I've made you all worry, Nie Tian said with some embarrassment in the hall of the inner courtyard. Nie Tian, are you really all right? Ming Jinyu stared at Nie Tian and was still somewhat worried. He used his divine sense to sense Nie Tian's body again and again, afraid that something might have happened to Nie Tian. I'm really fine. That senior didn't have any ill intentions when he took me away. We were just playing a game, Nie Tian said with a faint smile. Ming Jinyu and the others were stunned and expressed their disbelief. However, Nie Tian did not want to say anything more, so they did not continue to ask. Most importantly, Nie Tian was really fine. Elder Ming, did anything happen after I left? Nie Tian asked with a faint smile. Everything is normal. Ming Jinyu nodded slightly, but he could not hide the worry on his face. Something is about to happen. At this moment, Zhuozhua let out a bitter laugh and said helplessly. Nie Tian, Ming Jinyu, and the others were stunned at the same time. They looked at Zhuozhua, who sighed and said, The people from the Yinhui Empire will arrive soon. Let's go out. With that, Zhuozhua took the lead and walked out of the small courtyard. Nie Tian and the others immediately followed. Outside the small courtyard, Nie Tian looked at the sky in the distance. The surroundings were clear and cloudless, and there were no signs of anything. However, he believed Zhuozhua's words, because the latter's perception was very strong. Boom! A moment later, a roar suddenly sounded in the sky. Immediately, the clear sky turned dark and gloomy. Above the horizon, dark clouds rolled over aggressively. The space became darker and darker, as if the sky was about to collapse. In Bushio, if you want to come, then come. Is there a need to make such a big scene? Zhuozhua shook her head and smiled. She looked at the sky, but there was no panic in her eyes. Following that, the dark clouds in the sky grew closer. Finally, they could clearly see thousands of black-clad cultivators standing in the churning clouds. When Ye Tian saw this, he could not help but frown and murmur, "So many cultivators have moved out at the same time. Has the Inue Empire turned out in full force for just one In Xianyue? Is In Jianyue so important to the Inue Empire?" Zhuozhuo frowned, obviously a little surprised. He hadn't thought that the Inue Empire would actually send so many cultivators for In Xianyue. Thousands of paramount gods were the full force of the Inue imperial family. "Master Zhuozhuo, long time no see." At this moment, a dark and cold low voice sounded in the sky. Soon after, a black figure stepped through the air and arrived. He stood in the midair, while a pair of cold abyss-like eyes stared intently at Zhuozhuo. Nye Tian looked at the figure. The latter was like a bottomless mass of darkness. Just by standing there, he gave off an extremely strong sense of oppression. Judging from his aura, this person's strength was at least at the half-step saint level. He was definitely not weaker than Ming Jianyu. "In Bushio, how have you been?" Zhuozhuo looked at the man and said indifferently, calling his name. This dark figure was none other than the emperor of the Inue Empire, In Xianyue's father, In Bushio. "Master Zhuozhuo, you and I used to be a ruler and a subject. Now that we meet again, you call me by my name. Is this your way of being a subject?" In Bushio said coldly. His eyes released a faint black light, revealing an evil intent. "In Bushio, as you said, you and I used to be a ruler and a subject, but that was only in the past. Now you are you and I am me. Our status is equal. Is there anything wrong with me calling you by your name?" Zhuozhuo responded coldly, without the slightest concession. "Ha ha ha, well said." In Bushio's eyes were gloomy, but then he laughed and said loudly, "It seems that you really want to go against me. I really don't understand what benefits the Jifeng clan has given you to protect Jifeng Xiaoxiao for so many years." In Bushio's words were just a test to test Zhuozhuo's attitude, and the result he got was that Zhuozhuo was really going against him. "In Bushio, the Jifeng clan did not give me any benefit. I just don't like your methods." Zhuozhuo smiled faintly and said directly, "I know very well what kind of person you are. Do you dare to say that Jifeng Xiaoxiao's matter has nothing to do with you?" Jifeng Xiaoxiao was stunned when he heard Zhuozhuo's words, and his expression changed. He had always thought that the person who framed him was In Xianyue, but from Zhuozhuo's words, it seemed that In Bushio was also involved in this matter. Could it be that In Bushio already knew that he was framed? "Master Zhuozhuo, is there any meaning in saying this now?" In Bushio laughed, as if he did not want to talk nonsense anymore. He said directly, "I have come personally. Let him go." "In Bushio, tell me clearly. Do you know that In Xianyue framed me back then?" Jifeng Xiaoxiao stepped forward and shouted before In Bushio's voice had even faded. "Huh!" In Bushio looked at Jifeng Xiaoxiao, and his face instantly darkened. He said coldly, "An ant dares to call me by my name?" Boom! In Bushio directly struck with his palm. Suddenly, a terrifying palm shadow appeared, like a black cloud descending from the sky, and pressed down on Jifeng Xiaoxiao. What a powerful aura! Nye Tian felt the surging aura in the void. His face suddenly darkened, and he exclaimed in his heart. In Bushio was indeed terrifying. When he struck with his palm, the void shook and the sky seemed to collapse. It was only a palm, but the aura that could devour the heavens and earth was displayed to the fullest. The power of this palm was enough to destroy a city with a radius of hundreds of thousands of meters. If it really fell, not only would Jifeng Xiaoxiao die, but even Nye Tian and the others would also be buried with him. "Back off!" At this critical moment, a vigorous and old voice sounded. Then, a figure rushed into the sky. It was Ming Jianyu. Ming Jianyu's body turned into a dragon, and at the same time, he struck with both of his palms. Suddenly, endless majestic power appeared, turning into a huge light net in the air. Rumble! In the next moment, the terrifying palm fell, but it was blocked by the light net in the air. Endless power wreaked havoc in the space, spreading in all directions. Ming Jinyu used all his strength and finally blocked Yin Bushio's destructive palm. However, his figure was immediately hit and fell to the ground like a boulder. The ground within a few hundred meters collapsed. Master! Elder Ming! Mizuhara Kaori and Nie Tian's voices sounded at almost the same time. They directly rushed to Ming Jianyu and landed beside him. I'm fine. Ming Jianyu's face was pale, and there was a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. Nie Tian's eyes trembled. He used his divine sense to sense Ming Jianyu's body, and found that the latter's blood was boiling. Obviously, he was seriously injured. Nie Tian's expression changed, and he was so shocked that he couldn't speak. Chapter 2158. Nie Tian's face stiffened for a few seconds, and then he hurriedly transferred the power of the earth vein source into Ming Jianyu's body to help him stabilize his blood qi. Nie Tian, I'm much better. Ming Jianyu's face finally relaxed, and he nodded slightly. He also did not expect Yin Bushio's strength to be so terrifying. The power of his palm was so terrifying. Nie Tian frowned and looked up at Yin Bushio in the sky. His eyes were filled with killing intent. Although Ming Jianyu had recovered a little, he was still seriously injured, and it was impossible for him to compete with Yin Bushio. Nie Tian had already seen that Yin Bushio was not only extremely powerful, but also meticulous and ruthless. Yin Bushio had long noticed Ming Jianyu's existence. On the surface, it seemed that he was angered by Gale Xiaoxiao and wanted to kill him, but his real purpose was to force Ming Jianyu to attack. Ming Jianyu's strength might be weaker than Yin Bushio's, but he was definitely not weak enough to be seriously injured by Yin Bushio's palm. However, Yin Bushio's palm was very sudden, and Ming Jianyu didn't have much time to react. Ming Jianyu had actually lost the initiative to save Ming Jianyu, and he was indeed weaker than Yin Bushio, so he was seriously injured. If it was a real confrontation, it would not be so easy for Yin Bushio to defeat Ming Jianyu. This was Yin Bushio's cunning. He saw that Ming Jianyu was the only half-saint expert on Zhuozhuo's side, so he launched a sneak attack to injure Ming Jianyu first. Yin Bushio, I haven't seen you for many years, but you are still so vicious. Zhuozhuo said to Yin Bushio, staring at him. Vicious? Yin Bushio sneered and said, my attack is just a strategy. Moreover, after injuring him, wouldn't the following matters be much simpler? You. Zhuozhuo's eyes were so gloomy that she couldn't say a word. Yin Bushio was not only vicious, but also shameless. At this time, Nie Tian finally saw some clues. Previously, he had the same opinion as Gale Xiaoxiao. Back then, Gale Xiaoxiao was framed because of Yin Xianyue. But now, it seemed that things weren't that simple. Yin Bushio was a very shrewd person. How could such a cunning person not see that Yin Xie was framing Gale Xiaoxiao? But in the end, he still punished Gale Xiaoxiao and made him bear the name of humiliation. Nie Tian even felt that the reason why Yin Xianyue framed Gale Xiaoxiao was because of Yin Bushio's instructions. The Swift Gale clan was very powerful. This method was also a method to restrict their clan's strength. If that was the case, then Yin Bushio was extremely sinister and ruthless. Zhuozhuo, hand him over, Yin Bushio said coldly. His eyes were cold. When he saw Zhuozhuo, he had already determined that the abduction of Yin Xianyue was Zhuozhuo's plan. However, he did not understand why Zhuozhuo would do this. However, this was no longer important. Since Yin Bushio had come in person, he must take Yin Xiyu away. Zhuozhuo frowned and looked into the distance, as if she was waiting for someone. He was indeed waiting for someone who could turn the situation around. A few days ago, he had sent a signal to inform someone. Unfortunately, that person had not arrived yet. You are always late. This time I am really in trouble because of you. Zhuozhuo said in her heart. Her old face was twisted. "In Bushio, if you don't explain what happened in the past, we will not let him go." At this time, Gale Xiao Xiao stood up and shouted angrily. "It's this ant again." In Bushio's eyes darkened. He stared coldly at Gale Xiao Xiao and said in a deep voice, "Little bastard, even your father Gale Ling does not dare to call me by my name. What right do you have?" As his cold voice fell, In Bushio suddenly stretched out a hand. Suddenly, an invisible force appeared and lifted Gale Xiao Xiao. Gale Xiao Xiao was directly lifted into the air. It was as if an invisible hand was strangling his neck, making it difficult for him to breathe. Gale Xiao Xiao. The sudden scene made Nie Tian's eyes tremble and he exclaimed, "Little bastard, it is a miracle that you can still live for so long after being hit by my Inue evil seal. Since you don't want to die, let me send you on your way." In Bushio's cold voice sounded. With a thought, Gale Xiao Xiao's figure shook violently, as if he was about to explode in the next moment. "Stop!" At this moment, an angry roar sounded. It was Nie Tian, who said loudly, "If you want In Xianwei to live, stop." In Bushio frowned. He looked around and saw In Xianwei standing there with a sword blade on her neck that could cut off her neck at any time. "Boy, are you threatening me?" In Bushio's face darkened. His eyes were filled with killing intent, but his hands had stopped moving. "So what if I am threatening you?" Nie Tianling responded coldly and said in a deep voice, "If you dare to act rashly, I will kill her directly." As the deep voice fell, the sword blade on In Xianyue's neck sank a little, and blood suddenly oozed from her neck. "Father, save me, I don't want to die." In Xianyue's face was pale with fear. She had already seen Nie Tian's ruthlessness. Of course, she believed that Nie Tian would really dare to kill her. "Good." In Bushio looked at Nie Tian and suddenly growled. Then, he loosened his grip and Gale Xiao Zhao's figure fell directly. In an instant, Nie Tian's eyes trembled, and then he turned to look at Mizuhara Xiang, wanting the latter to catch Gale Xiao Xiao. However, at this moment, something strange happened. "Go to hell." Mizuhara Xiang's eyes suddenly turned dark, and her expression was extremely strange, as if she did not know Nie Tian. She roared and slapped at Nie Tian. The sudden change caught Nie Tian off guard, and he was sent flying by Mizuhara Xiang's palm. Nie Tian, Ming Jianyu and Zhuozhuo were shocked by the scene in front of them, and they screamed at the same time. They had no idea what was going on. Almost at the same time, In Bushio stretched out his big hand, and a force of nothingness appeared in the void, directly rolling In Xianwei up into the air. Nie Tian was still in the air, but he instantly understood everything. In Bushio did not know what method he used to control Mizuhara Xiang's divine sense. When Mizuhara Xiang attacked Nie Tian, In Bushio directly rescued In Xianwei. "Ha ha ha, you want to fight with me? You are too weak." In Bushio laughed loudly and pulled his arm, controlling In Xianwei to fly to his side. Swoosh! However, at this moment, an extremely fast light shadow suddenly flashed in the air, and then In Xianyue's figure disappeared. In Bushio was stunned, and then his eyes turned to the ground, where a figure in green stood, controlling In Xianyue. Gale Ling. In Bushio saw the face of the figure in green and directly shouted the latter's name. Chapter 2159. "Father!" Gale Xiao exclaimed when he saw the green-robed figure. His eyes trembled as tears welled up in his eyes. The person who had appeared was his father. How could he not be emotional? He had never expected Gale Ling to show up at this moment. He had not seen Gale Ling since he had left the family. Naturally, he was very emotional to see his father again. Gale Ling turned to look at Gale Xiao. He did not say anything, but his eyes were filled with undisguised love. Gale Ling did not blame Gale Xiao at all. Instead, he felt a little guilty. "Gale Ling, it's you." In Bushio looked at Gale Ling and said, "I didn't expect to see you here. Your Majesty, are you surprised that I am here?" Gale Ling looked at Yin Bushio coldly, unable to conceal the anger in his eyes. Gale Ling, you really shouldn't be here. Do you know that your appearance is equivalent to dragging the Galewind tribe into a bottomless abyss? Yin Bushio said in a deep voice, as though he was feeling sorry for the Galewind tribe. Yin Bushio, back then, you framed my son Gale Shao. I swallowed my anger in order to protect the Galewind tribe. Now, you want to kill my son. Do you expect me to swallow my anger? Gale Ling said angrily. Father, what are you talking about? Gale Ling's words stunned Gale Shao. He could not help but exclaim as he looked at his father in disbelief. Gale Ling's words clearly meant that he had known the truth all along. He just had not told Gale Shao. Ah! Before Gale Ling could speak, Yin Bushio suddenly laughed maniacally and said loudly, Gale Ling, it seems like your foolish son is still in the dark. Is he really that naive to think that you don't know what happened back then? Gale Ling's face darkened. He could not bear to speak. Father, what is going on? Gale Zhao's eyes trembled as he screamed. Gale Ling looked at Gale Shao with a stiff expression. He finally said, Shao, I actually knew the truth about you being framed back then. However, for the survival of the Galewind tribe, I had to sacrifice you. For so many years, it wasn't you who let down the Galeforce tribe, but the Galeforce tribe let you down. After saying that, 2 streams of tears rolled down Gale Ling's aged face. Sacrificing his own son to protect the family, his heart was also incomparably painful. Gale was stunned. He didn't expect the truth to be like this. Even his own father had lied to him. This time, he risked his life to capture Yin Jianyue in order to force the latter to tell the truth and prove his innocence. He wanted to gain Gale Zero's recognition, to let the latter see that he, Gale Zero, was not a disgrace to the Gale tribe. However, the truth was that he was too childish. His father, the Yin Moon Emperor, and perhaps even more people already knew the truth, they just didn't tell him. Originally, he thought that it was because of him that he had implicated his family, and he felt very guilty. But the truth of the matter was that the family had sacrificed him for the sake of self-preservation. Shao, I know it's hard for you to accept, but this is the truth. Gale Ling looked at Gale Shao and said in a pained voice, Back then, our Galeforce tribe was too powerful, and the Yin Moon royal family felt threatened. So, Yin Bushio personally designed this show, using Yin Jianyue to frame you. At the same time, he greatly suppressed the Galeforce tribe's strength. I knew the truth back then, but for the sake of the family, I had to sacrifice you. Now that I've told you everything, I hope you can forgive me, forgive the family. Towards the end, Gale Ling's voice became softer and softer, because he knew that his request was too much. For the sake of the Galeforce tribe, Gale Shao had endured so many years of humiliation. Even the Galeforce tribe saw him as a disgrace. But now, he still wanted Gale Shao to forgive the family. This request was too much. Gale Shao used to be the most talented person in the Gale clan, but now he had become like this. Not only was the Inoue imperial family responsible for this tragedy, but the Gale clan also had some responsibility. If Gale Ling had told Gale Shao the truth earlier, at least the latter would not feel so guilty. Gale Shao was stunned on the spot, unable to speak for a long time. Gale Ling, oh Gale Ling, since you've already decided to sacrifice Gale Shao to protect the Galeforce tribe, why do you have to appear now? Yin Bushio's voice was heard again, this time with a strong sense of mockery. Gale Shao has already become like this. What difference does it make whether he dies or not? He's my son. Suddenly, Gale Ling raised his head to look at Yin Bushio and roared, Yin Bushio, you bastard! Do you want me to watch my son die? Yin Bushio's face darkened. He clearly did not expect Gale Ling to insult him. His eyes turned cold and he said, Gale Ling, you're too presumptuous. Today, the Galeforce tribe will be exterminated. No. At that moment, before Gale Ling could speak, Gale Shao suddenly shouted, Bushyo, kill me. I'm willing to bear all the consequences, as long as you let the Gale Force tribe go. Gale Ling's eyes trembled, and hot tears welled up in his eyes. He did not expect Gale Xiao to use his life to save the Gale Force tribe at this moment. Father, he's right. Since I've already become like this, what difference does it make whether I'm dead or alive? Gale Xiao looked at Gale Ling with a strange expression in his eyes. Xiao, your father. Gale Ling's expression froze, and tears streamed down his face. Ha ha! What a scene of deep father-son love. However, at that moment, Bushyo burst into laughter. Then, his face darkened and he said coldly, "It's a pity that only Gale Xiao dies in the current situation. It's far from enough. Today, regardless of whether Gale Xiao is alive or not, the Gale Force tribe will not be able to escape the calamity of extermination." Gale Ling and Gale Xiao were stunned when they heard the insolent words. Their faces were filled with shock. They did not expect Bushyo to be so vicious. Even if Gale Xiao begged for death, he would not let the Gale Force tribe go. Bushyo, do you really want to be so ruthless? Gale Ling's eyes narrowed as he looked at Bushyo. Gale Ling, it's not that I'm ruthless, but that you're too stupid. The Gale Force tribe should have been exterminated long ago. It's because I was soft-hearted that I allowed you to live until now. Now, it's time for you to disappear. Bushyo's eyes were cold, and his entire body was filled with murderous intent. Chapter 2160. What? Bushyo was taken aback by Gale Ling's sudden change in attitude. Gale Ling, it seems you've made up your mind. You're ready to fight the Moon Imperial family head-on. Hundreds of paramount gods suddenly appeared around Galestorm Zero. Obviously, this was the strongest fighting force the Galestorm race had to offer. This time, Gale Ling was determined to fight Bushyo to the death. So what if I am? Gale Ling smiled. Bushyo, even if you destroy the Galewind clan, I'll make sure the Moon Imperial family pays a heavy price. Father, you. Gale Xiao looked at Gale Ling. He hadn't expected the Galewind clan to go all out against the Moon Imperial family. Xiao, there's no need to say anything. The clan owes you. Today, the clan will live or die with you. Gale Ling nodded, his eyes filled with determination. Gale Xiao turned to look at the clan members behind him. They were all filled with righteous indignation, as if they weren't afraid of death. He wanted to say something, but didn't. Seeing this, Nie Tian frowned, and his expression instantly became serious. He hadn't expected things to turn out this way. The Moon Imperial family and the Galewind clan were going to fight to the death. But the difference in strength between the two sides was too great. Bushyo had thousands of paramount gods behind him, while the Galewind clan only had a few hundred. The difference in strength was more than tenfold. Most importantly, Bushyo was far stronger than Gale Ling. Nie Tian had long since sensed Gale Ling's aura. He was most likely a half-saint, but his aura was much weaker, and his battle prowess seemed lower than Ming Jinyu's. Nie Tian guessed that in a head-on fight, Gale Ling wouldn't even be able to take a single move from Bushyo. Bushyo's battle prowess was terrifying enough to kill Gale Ling in a single move. Given the difference in strength, the Galewind clan would be like throwing an egg against a rock if they tried to fight the Moon Imperial family. Zhuo was clearly aware of the situation. She looked very anxious as she waited for reinforcements. Unfortunately, the person he had informed had yet to arrive. Stormling, do you really think you can fight me with just these people behind you? At this time, Bushyo sneered and said with disdain, "You are too naive. How can you and your clansmen resist the Moon army behind me?" Roar! Next, the thousands of peak paramount gods behind Bushyo shouted in unison, causing heaven and earth to tremble. Gale Ling's eyes trembled and he couldn't hide the shock on his face. However, his gaze was firm as he said loudly, "My Gale tribe's people are all brave men. None of us are afraid of death. Today, Even if my Swift Wind clan is to be exterminated, we will absolutely not take a step back. Never retreat. In the next moment, the people of the Swift Wind race roared at the same time. Their momentum was shocking, but compared to the Inuit army, it was far inferior. Ridiculous! Bushio sneered, his eyes filled with killing intent. Ridiculous! At this time, Gale Ling suddenly laughed coldly, and his face darkened. Bushio, I'm going to kill Attack Moon first. Let's see what you can do about it. With that, Gale Ling clasped his hands together. He was really going to kill Attack Moon. Tian frowned and his face fell. He hadn't expected Gale Ling to make such a move. Attack Moon was still in Gale Ling's hands, and he was the strongest trump card of the Swift Wind clan. But Gale Ling actually wanted to kill Attack Moon. That was simply stupid. Attack Moon's death would only serve to vent his anger. It wouldn't do the Swift Wind clan any good. But Bushio was completely enraged, and he wouldn't have any misgivings about his next move. Tian wanted to stop Gale Ling, but it was too late. Even if Bushio used Mizuhara Kaori again, he wouldn't be able to stop Gale Ling. After all, Gale Ling's strength wasn't something that Tian could compare to. Moreover, Mizuhara Kaori had already been controlled once. Now that she had regained consciousness, she would definitely be more cautious and wouldn't be controlled again. Gale Ling, can you kill him? Seeing Gale Ling suddenly trying to kill Attack Moon, Bushio didn't panic at all. Instead, he laughed wildly, as if everything was under his control. Just as he finished speaking, a strange scene happened. Gale Ling's expression suddenly changed, and his face stiffened. His palms stopped in midair, and his entire body seemed to have been petrified. He couldn't move at all. "Father, what's wrong with you?" Gale Xiao cried out in shock. He had a puzzled look on his face, and he had no idea what was going on. The others were also shocked, and they all looked at Gale Ling, wondering what was wrong with him. Oh no! At this moment, Zhuozhuo seemed to have discovered something. Her expression suddenly changed, and she became terrified, as if she had discovered something terrifying. Just as Zhuozhuo's voice fell, Gale Ling's body suddenly trembled. Following that, many bloody wounds appeared on his body, and blood spurted out. In an instant, he was covered in blood. "Father!" Gale Zhao's eyes widened, and his face was filled with extreme shock. "Clan leader!" The members of the Gale clan exclaimed, unable to conceal the fear in their eyes. What happened to Gale Ling's body? Why did he suddenly lose control of his blood qi? Tian frowned. Following that, he used his divine sense to sense Gale Ling, and his face stiffened. He could sense that blood qi was surging within Gale Ling's body, and an extremely strange power was crazily attacking his body. "Everyone, back off!" At this moment, Gale Ling suddenly shouted, and ordered everyone to back off, and not to get close to him. In the next instant, an even more shocking scene happened. Suddenly, countless bloody wounds appeared on Gale Ling's body, as if there were countless sharp blades tearing at his body. "Father!" Gale Xiao screamed in horror, and he dashed toward Gale Ling. Bang! Gale Ling's mouth opened wide, as if he wanted to say something. However, at this moment, his body could not withstand the wild power in his body, and with a violent jerk, he exploded, turning into a bloody mess that splattered in the air. Gale Zhao's body stiffened and his eyes reddened. His entire body was dyed red. At this moment, everyone's expressions froze, and they stared blankly at the bloody mess in the air. The shock in their hearts was written all over their faces. Gale Ling, a half-saint powerhouse, had died in front of everyone's eyes, just like that. Such a bloody and bizarre scene. If they had not seen it with their own eyes, they would not have believed it. Chapter 2161. This is... Everyone's eyes widened as they stared at the dark figure in the sky. They exclaimed in shock, but were unable to say a word. The face of the dark figure in the sky gradually became clearer. He swept his gaze across the people around him, and a sinister smile appeared on his face. Without a doubt, this was the person who killed Gale Ling. Nie Tian looked at the dark figure with unconcealable fear in his eyes. This guy was too powerful. He had actually killed a half-saint powerhouse without anyone noticing. The most shocking thing was this person's killing technique. He hid in the void and killed without leaving a trace. No one knew of his existence just now. Even Zhuo, who had strong senses, had only just discovered him. Who was this person? Dark Azura Lord. At that moment, Zhuo stared at the black figure and shouted out a name in a daze. Dark Azura Lord was this person's name. Zhuo had not expected the famous Dark Azura Lord to be here. When the others heard the name Dark Azura Lord, their eyes trembled again, and their expressions became even more shocked. Obviously, they were no strangers to the name Dark Azura Lord. The Dark Azura Lord was none other than the master of the Dark Azura Field. However, he was famous in the abandoned land not because of his identity as the master of the Dark Azura Field, but because he was known as the #1 assassin in the abandoned land. Rumor had it that the Dark Azura Lord was a super assassin who was proficient in assassination. Countless powerhouses had died in his hands. Who would have thought that such a terrifying person would actually appear here? The Dark Azura Lord's assassination techniques were indeed worthy of his reputation. He had killed Gale Ling without anyone noticing. "Thank you, Lord Dark Azura Lord." At this time, Yin Bushio said faintly. There was not much surprise on his face, because everything was within his expectations. "It's nothing." The Dark Azura Lord's lips twitched. His voice was as cold as ice, and there was a hint of hoarseness in it. Suddenly, the Dark Azura Lord looked at Mizuhara Xiang and laughed. "A fairy of the 5 elements. Not bad. Thank you for what you did just now." As soon as he finished speaking, the Dark Lord of Azura's figure suddenly moved, directly wrapping Yin Jianwei up and turning into a black shadow that rushed into the air. At this moment, Nie Tian suddenly understood, and his expression changed. Just now, when Mizuhara Kaori was being controlled, it wasn't Yin Bushio who had done it. It was the Dark Azura Lord. The Dark Azura Venerate had been lurking around them all this time. It was just that Nie Tian and the others hadn't noticed it at all. "Father." At this moment, Gale Little finally reacted. He let out a heart-wrenching wail. It was easy to imagine the pain he felt when he saw his own father being killed by someone. Lord Clan Chief. The people of the Swift Wind clan were also weeping bitterly in grief. Never in their wildest dreams would they have imagined that Galewind Ling, the clan leader of the Galewind clan, the strongest person in the clan, would be killed just like that. At this moment, Nie Tian's expression darkened. He was still able to remain clear-headed, but he could not hide the panic in his eyes. Stormwind Zero's unexpected death made the situation even worse. The Swift Wind clan had completely lost the ability to resist. On the side of the Inu Empire, not only were there thousands of Inu soldiers, but there were also 2 super experts, Yin Bushio and the Dark Azura Lord. It was no exaggeration to say that whether it was Yin Bushio or the Dark Azura Lord, any one of them was enough to annihilate the entire Swift Wind clan. To make matters worse, Yin Xianyue had also been rescued by the Dark Azura Lord. In this way, Nie Tian and the others had fallen into a hopeless situation. At this moment, Nie Tian truly felt how weak he was. Facing experts like Yin Bushio and the Dark Azura Lord, he was like a little lamb. He was an insignificant existence that could only be trampled on. In the next moment, he couldn't help but turn to look at Zhuo. His last hope lay in the latter. Zhuo had once said that no matter what happened, he would take it on for Gale Little. But now, the situation had completely fallen into a hopeless situation. The expert that he had invited had yet to appear. Nie Tian even felt that even if the person invited by Zhuo appeared now, he might not be able to control the situation. "Lord Saint Duelist, we have done our best. Next, we can only protect ourselves. Don't worry, even if I have to risk my life, I will make sure you leave this place. At this moment, Ming Jinyu transmitted his voice to Nie Tian, preparing to escape. Nie Tian frowned. He had no intention of leaving. Father, I want them all to die. In midair, Yin Xianwei stood behind Yin Buxiu, pointing at Nie Tian and the others with a gloomy face. But in the next moment she suddenly thought of something. A pair of cold eyes locked on Nie Tian, and she said coldly, Father, that silver-haired boy can't be killed. He was the one who captured me and humiliated me. I won't let him die so easily. I will torture him slowly, let him taste all kinds of torture and humiliation before he dies. Yin Xianyue's cold and deep voice was enough to show how much resentment Yin Xianyue had for Nie Tian. Looking at Nie Tian, Yin Xianyue could still clearly feel the burning pain on her face. She would never forget the dozen slaps Nie Tian had slapped her in the face. Xianyue, step back. Yin Buxiu smiled and immediately waved his hand, signaling Yin Xianyue to step back. At this moment, the Dark Azura Venerate suddenly smiled strangely and said, Brother Yin, we have an agreement between us. As he spoke, the Dark Azura Venerate's eyes were fixed on Nie Tian, seemingly very interested in the latter. Lord Dark Azura Venerate, rest assured that I will not break my promise to you. You can take that silver-haired boy away. Yin Buxiu smiled faintly and said without hesitation, Nie Tian couldn't help but frown when he heard Yin Buxiu's words. He didn't expect that the Dark Azura Venerate had come for him. There's no hurry. Anyway, this boy is already a turtle in a jar. I want to see how capable he is. The Dark Azura Venerate's eyes glowed strangely as he stared at Nie Tian, as if he was thinking about something. The reason why he had come here in person this time was because of Nie Tian. This was because he had learned from the black-clothed referee that Nie Tian had a dragon vein in his body. Now that he had come in person, he had confirmed with his own eyes that Nie Tian indeed had a dragon vein. Therefore, he had to take Nie Tian away. Yin Buxiu wasn't very interested in Nie Tian, so he didn't care about the latter at all. Without hesitation, Yin Buxiu shouted, Yin Moon Army, listen up! Other than Zhuozhua and that silver-haired boy, kill everyone else. Jifeng Ling was already dead, and the Jifeng tribe no longer had the power to resist. Next, it was time to kill. Yes. The Yin Moon Army responded in unison, their voices like thunder and their aura was shocking. They stared at the people of the Jifeng tribe like a pack of wolves staring at a flock of sheep. Chapter 2162. In an instant, everyone heard the cry of the sword and looked up. Boom! Above the vast sky, a gigantic shadow of a sword appeared. Like a giant dragon, it stirred up the endless dark clouds and descended from the sky. What a powerful sword aura! Nie Tian looked up and saw the sword shadow in the sky. He could feel the terrifying sword aura, and his face was filled with shock. Without a doubt, this was the strongest sword aura he had ever seen. The majestic aura seemed boundless, and it actually triggered the sword will in his body, making his blood boil. Something's wrong. In the next moment, Nie Tian suddenly felt something, and the sword will in his body suddenly became uncontrollable. It turned into a sword aura and surged up into the sky. Everyone else was paying attention to the mighty sword shadow in the sky, and none of them paid attention to Nie Tian. However, Nie Tian's eyes trembled, and there was an unconcealable joy on his face. In that instant, he was affected by the sword will in the sky, and the sword will in his body resonated with it. Because of that, his sword Dao realm actually improved. In the blink of an eye, Nie Tian went from a swordsman in the state of selflessness to a swordsman in the state of one with sword and martial arts. The sudden improvement in his cultivation caught Nie Tian by surprise. He was extremely shocked by the power of the unknown swordsman in the sky. This swordsman was simply too terrifying. With just a sword shadow, he had actually helped Nie Tian achieve a breakthrough in his sword Dao. At this moment, Nie Tian was shocked beyond words. He couldn't imagine how terrifying this swordsman's sword Dao strength was. You're finally here. At this moment, Zhuozhuo looked at the sword shadow in the sky, and her heart finally calmed down. The master of this sword shadow was the person she had invited. Rumble! In the next moment, under the gaze of countless people, the sword shadow in the sky suddenly fell. The ground within a few 100,000 meters shook violently, and a majestic sword intent formed a circular sword wave that surged in all directions. High up in the sky, thousands of peak paramount gods were forced back hundreds of meters by the sword wave. After a while, everyone stabilized themselves and looked at the huge sword shadow on the ground. Their eyes were filled with shock. The sword shadow was 10,000 meters long, like a giant that could support the heavens and the earth. It stood between the heavens and the earth, emitting a boundless sword intent. The sword shadows were like mountains, separating the Inuit army from the swift wind race. The In-Moon army was intimidated by the sword shadows and didn't dare to move at all. In fact, they were constantly retreating. The people of the Stormwind clan stared at the huge sword shadow in front of them in astonishment. Brother Zhuo, I'm sorry I'm late. Just as everyone was endlessly shocked, a powerful voice rang out high up in the sky. Soon after, a figure stepped through the air and landed on the sword shadow. The newcomer was dressed in white and had a tall and slender figure. He stood at the peak of the sword shadow like a mountain, giving off a feeling that one could only look up to him. Everyone looked at that person with indescribable shock in their eyes. The white-robed figure exuded a mysterious and strange sword-intent aura, as if he himself was a sharp sword. He is. At this moment, Yin Bushio frowned. He seemed to recognize the person, but he wasn't sure, so he didn't dare to say it. The mysterious Heaven Sword Saint. Beside him, the dark Azura Venerate had a strange expression and said in a playful tone, I really didn't expect this guy to come. Now the scene is going to be lively. The mysterious Heaven Sword Saint. When Yin Bushio heard this name, his expression suddenly changed, and he exclaimed, could it be one of the three great legends of the sword world, the mysterious Heaven Sword Saint Sikong Shwani? The dark Azura Venerate laughed strangely and said, this sword shadow has a mysterious sword seal aura. Aside from the mysterious Heaven Sword Saint, who else could it be? It's really him. Yin Bushio was startled and his face was filled with extreme horror. His throat moved and his voice trembled as he asked, why is he here? The mysterious Heaven Sword Saint. Yin Bushio was naturally not unfamiliar with this name. The land of the abandoned had three great legends of the sword world. They were the top figures of the sword world and also the strongest cultivators in the entire land of the abandoned. The mysterious Heaven Sword Saint was one of the three great legends of the sword world. Rumor had it that the three legendary swordsmen were all powerful cultivators close to becoming sages. With such a person suddenly arriving, how could Yin Bushio not panic? Also, after the mysterious Heaven Sword Saint arrived, he directly greeted Zhuozhuo. It was obvious he had been invited by Zhuozhuo. After hearing Yin Bushio and the Dark Azura Venerate's words, Nie Tian couldn't help but look at the mysterious Heaven Sword Saint. His expression became a bit strange, and he thought, this person is the mysterious Heaven Sword Saint, a legendary peak swordsman of the land of the abandoned. His name is Sikong Shwani. Why do I feel like I've heard this name before? It's inexplicably familiar. Nie Tian frowned. He felt like he had heard the name Sikong Shwani before, but he couldn't remember. With Sikong Shwani's identity and strength, his appearance made Nie Tian feel relieved. It seemed like the situation was under control. This was the majesty of a powerful cultivator. Sikong Shwani was undoubtedly an existence close to becoming a sage. Nie Tian was very curious. He didn't know if Sikong Shwani or the mysterious person from before was stronger. At this moment, Zhuozhuo looked at Sikong Shwani and helplessly shook his head. Brother Sikong, you are late again. He didn't blame Sikong Shwani, but he thought that if Sikong Shwani had arrived earlier, perhaps Gale Ling wouldn't have had to die. Brother Zhuo, I'm really sorry. I was delayed by some matters. Sikong Shwani bowed slightly to express his apology. Ah! Zhuozhuo let out a sigh and bitterly smiled. You are always late. Fortunately, I didn't come too late this time, or else I would have seen rivers of blood. Sikong Shwani's expression was calm, but his eyes were full of remorse. Then, he glanced at Yin Bushio and the Dark Azura Lord, as if he couldn't be bothered to look at them. He said one word, scram. His voice was not loud, and his words were extremely concise, but there was a kind of undefiable dominance in them. Facing experts like the Yin Moon Emperor and the Dark Azura Lord, Sikong Shwani didn't even have the interest to look at them. In his opinion, whether it was Yin Bushio or the Dark Azura Lord, they were not worth mentioning in front of him. Yin Bushio's expression darkened. He was very embarrassed, but he didn't dare to speak. He knew that his strength was completely incomparable to Sikong Shwani's. In the entire Yin Moon Empire, only the Yin Moon Ancestor had the strength to fight against Sikong Shwani. The Yin Moon Ancestor was a supreme expert of the Yin Moon Imperial family, and a pillar of the Yin Moon Empire. Without the Yin Moon Ancestor, the Yin Moon Empire couldn't have become a top force in the Abandoned Land. If the Yin Moon Ancestor was here, the Yin Moon Empire would have the right to speak to Sikong Shwani. Now Yin Bushio could only scram. Chapter 2163. Sikong Shwani was taken aback when he heard the Dark Lord of Azura's words. He took another look at the Dark Lord of Azura and smiled. So you're a disciple of Anya Minjia. Anya Minjia? Zhuozhuo's expression changed slightly when she heard the name. He hadn't expected the Dark Lord of Azura to be Anya Minjia's disciple. Anya Minjia's name was as famous as Sikong Shwani's, because both were among the three legends of the Sword World. Sikong Shwani's title was the Mysterious Heaven Sword Sage, while Anya Minjia's title was the Dark Night Sword Sage. The Dark Lord of Azura didn't just want to greet Sikong Shwani. He wanted to use his master's name to talk to him. If you have anything to say, just say it. Sikong Shwani clearly didn't want to waste his breath, and he spoke directly to the Dark Venerate Azura. Lord Sword Sage, I didn't mean to offend you. However, I'm here on the orders of my master to take someone away. I hope Lord Sword Sage won't make things difficult for me for my master's sake, the Dark Lord of Azura said respectfully and calmly. He addressed Sikong Shwani as Lord Sword Sage, and called himself Junior, because he wanted to put Sikong Shwani in such a high position that the latter would be too embarrassed to fight him. Nie Tian's face darkened when he heard the Dark Lord of Azura's words. From the look of it, it seemed that Anya Minjia wanted to capture Nie Tian. Nie Tian didn't know who Anya Minjia was, but he was worried that Sikong Shwani would sell him out. After all, Sikong Shwani and Nie Tian didn't know each other. He had only appeared because of Zhuozhuo. Sikong Shwani smiled and said, I'm curious about the person the Dark Knight Sword Sage wants. What kind of person is he? Sikong Shwani's gaze swept across everyone. When he saw Nie Tian, his expression suddenly changed. His eyes were filled with surprise. Oh no, he saw through me. Nie Tian noticed Sikong Shwani's expression and his expression changed. He had just relied on Sikong Shwani's sword intent to unexpectedly advance to the realm of sword and martial arts as one, which was equivalent to stealing Sikong Shwani's sword intent. Although he didn't take the initiative to do it, he still did it. If Sikong Shwani blamed him for this, it would be very troublesome. At this moment, Sikong Shwani stared at Nie Tian and said with a faint smile, Is it him? Lord Sword Saint is wise. He's the one my master wants. The Dark Azura Lord was stunned for a moment. He clearly hadn't expected Sikong Shwani to notice Nie Tian so quickly. The corner of Sikong Shwani's mouth twitched, but his gaze never left Nie Tian. He suddenly smiled and said, Little friend, so the person who resonated with my sword intent was you. His calm voice caused everyone to be shocked. At the same time, they looked at Nye Tian with shock and disbelief. No one believed that Nye Tian had resonated with Sikong Xuani's sword intent. "Senior, you must be joking. I just happened to sense your sword intent and accidentally used it to advance to the next realm. I hope you don't mind," Nye Tian said carefully as he bowed slightly. Sikong Xuani's identity and strength were obvious, so he had to be careful. Sword intent resonance was not something that could be casually mentioned. Generally speaking, swordsmen who could resonate with sword intent were people whose sword intent was similar to their sword intent. Nye Tian's sword intent was certainly not weak, but it was clearly much weaker than Sikong Xuani's. Therefore, if he said that he had resonated with Sikong Xuani, it would be no different from a joke to others. It could even be understood as Nye Tian insulting Sikong Xuani. The expressions on everyone's faces were proof of this. However, Nye Tian was very sure that he had indeed resonated with Sikong Xuani just now. He didn't know why either. However, he couldn't say that now. Otherwise, he might incur Sikong Xuani's displeasure. A legendary peak swordsman in the Forsaken Land resonating with a junior swordsman was not a good reputation. Ha ha ha! At this moment, Sikong Xuani suddenly laughed loudly and said, "Young friend, you don't have to be humble. Although it was only for a moment, I'm very sure of it. Since your sword intent can resonate with mine, it doesn't mean that my sword intent is weak, but it means that your sword intent is strong. Your sword intent improved because of this. This is the result of your strength. I just happened to help you a little." Sikong Xuani looked at Nye Tian with unconcealable praise in his eyes. "Thank you, senior." Nye Tian let out a sigh of relief when he heard Sikong Xuani's words. From the looks of it, Sikong Xuani was an upright person, and not a petty person. Zhuozhuo was shocked to see Nye Tian and Sikong Xuani chatting happily. He didn't even notice that Nye Tian and Sikong Xuani had resonated with each other. In his opinion, this was utterly impossible, because the difference between their strengths in the sword Dao was truly too great. However, Sikong Xuani had personally confirmed that the sword intent resonance was definitely not fake. Furthermore, Nye Tian's mastery of the sword had improved as well. Zhuozhuo didn't expect this surprising turn of events. On the other side, the Dark Azura Lord's expression was extremely ugly. He hadn't expected the sword intent resonance at all. "Sir Sword Sage, this young friend Sword Will is very unique. My master would like to meet him. I hope that Sir Sword Sage will allow me to do so." After thinking for a moment, the Dark Lord of Azura changed his tone and said sincerely, "Is that so?" Sikong Xuani frowned slightly and said, "Han Azura, your master wanting to meet this young friend has nothing to do with me. You can just ask him yourself." The Dark Azura Monarch went blank for a moment. He hadn't expected Sikong Xuani to say such a thing. He frowned, then turned to Nye Tian and said, "Young friend, my master is one of the 3 great legends of the sword world. He wants to meet you, so please do him the honor." Although his words were an invitation, there was a strong sense of threat in his tone. "Well..." Nye Tian raised his eyebrows and didn't answer directly. Instead, he looked at Sikong Xuani. Sikong Xuani smiled faintly and said in a loud voice, "Young friend, you resonated with me just now. This means that we are fated. I, Sikong Xuani, would like to be your friend. What do you think?" Nye Tian's eyes flickered as he hastily said, "It's my honor to be friends with you, senior." "Very well." Sikong Xuani laughed and said, "Young friend Nye Tian, you and I are friends now. You can boldly respond to Han Azura's invitation. If you want to meet Anya Minjia, I won't stop you. If you don't want to go, I promise that no one can force you." As soon as he finished speaking, the Dark Azura Lord's face darkened. He was extremely embarrassed. Sikong Xuani's words were very clear. He was on Nye Tian's side. "Han Azura, I don't want to meet Anya Minjia," Nye Tian said with a faint smile. With Sikong Xuani's support, He wasn't afraid of the dark Azura Lord's threat. Chapter 2164. Just as the chilling voice rang out, a ray of black light appeared in the sky. Like a meteor, it fell from the sky. A terrifying dark aura spread out in the air and instantly gathered into a huge black sword shadow. It was like a huge black curtain covering half of the sky. The huge black sword shadow was like a huge black dragon lying in the sky, constantly emitting a dark aura, causing the surrounding space to darken significantly. On the black sword shadow, a black-robed figure stood, as if he had come from hell. His whole body was filled with a strong dark aura. This scene formed a sharp contrast with Sikong Shwani, who was standing on the black heavenly sword shadow. Everyone looked up at the dark figure in the sky, their eyes trembling. Nye Tian looked at the person on the black sword shadow in shock. Judging from the sword essence and aura, the strength of the person was definitely comparable to Sikong Shwani. Without a doubt, this newcomer was one of the three great sword world's legends of the abandoned land, just like Sikong Shwani, the Dark Knight sword saint Anya Minjia. Nye Tian had thought that the appearance of Sikong Shwani would be enough to reverse the situation. But now, it seemed like the situation had changed once again. Teacher! At this moment, Azura Han's voice sounded, full of joy and respect. He had not expected that Anya Minjia would come in person. In Bushio's face was full of horror, and he was extremely shocked. It was rare for the three legendary swordsmen of the abandoned land to come at the same time. Anya Minjia did not pay attention to Azura Han. His dark eyes were fixed on Sikong Shwani, and he said in a deep voice, "Sikong Shwani, long time no see." Although it was a greeting, there was a hint of indescribable playfulness in his voice. "Anya Minjia, don't you think it's too fake for us to talk like this?" With a faint smile, Sikong Shwani didn't beat around the bush. Instead, he took a glance at Nye Tian and said, "It seems that this young friend Nye Tian is indeed extraordinary. I can't believe the Dark Knight Sword Saint personally came to visit him. I'm curious as to what he has on him that is so attractive that a peak swordsman would personally take action." As he spoke, Sikong Shwani took a step forward. The gigantic sword beneath his feet actually moved along with his movement. The ground was directly torn apart, forming a terrifying ravine. Upon seeing this, Anya Minjia frowned. He knew that Sikong Shwani was protecting Nye Tian. "Sikong Shwani, as a friend, let me give you a piece of advice. It's best if you don't interfere in this matter." Anya Minjia's face darkened, and he immediately moved. A black sword shadow rolled in the air, and a majestic sword chi filled the air. Then Anya Minjia's eyes trembled as he stared straight at Sikong Shwani and said, "This is the first time you've met this little friend. To put it bluntly, you are just strangers. So, you don't have to sacrifice your life for him. Pay with your life." As soon as he finished speaking, Anya Minjia's tone had become extremely gloomy, and it was filled with a strong sense of threat. It seemed that he didn't want to waste time on Sikong Shwani and just wanted to take Nye Tian away as soon as possible. Sikong Shwani, of course, could hear the threat in Anya Minjia's words. He narrowed his eyes and smiled faintly. "Anya Minjia, you and I have never been friends. We are just opponents who haven't shed all pretenses of cordiality. So, I don't accept your advice. What you just said is very interesting. It seems that little friend Nye Tian is hiding a shocking secret. Are you going to kill me in order to take him away?" As he spoke, Sikong Shwani's figure moved, and the sword intent around him slowly spread out. Inadvertently, it turned into layers of sword intent barriers that enveloped Nye Tian and the others. Nye Tian immediately noticed this. His eyes trembled and he thought to himself, "Is the mysterious Heaven Sword Saint ready to fight with Anya Minjia?" Sikong Shwani had protected Nye Tian and the others with a sword intent barrier. It was obvious that he was ready to fight. Zhuozhuo also noticed this. Her face darkened and she couldn't help but look at Nye Tian a few more times. She seemed to be thinking about something. He originally thought that he would be dealing with the Swift Gale clan. He didn't expect that the real problem would be Nye Tian. He really couldn't understand what Nye Tian had that could not only alarm the Dark Azura Venerate, but also make Anya Minjia come in person. Moreover, Anya Minjia was very determined to take Nye Tian away. He didn't even hesitate to threaten Sikong Xuani. Zhuozhuo couldn't understand, and neither could Nye Tian. He didn't know why Anya Minjia and the Dark Azura Venerate were so interested in him. Sikong Xuani. At this moment, Anya Minjia suddenly growled, "Are you going to make an enemy out of me for someone you've only met once?" He obviously didn't expect that his threat would not only fail, but also cause Sikong Xuani to prepare for battle. "I've already told you, young friend Nye Tian is my friend." Sikong Xuani's face was calm as he said in a deep voice, "If he's willing to go with you, I won't stop him. If he's unwilling, no one can force him. Han Azura can't, and neither can Anya Minjia." Boom! As his cold voice rang out, Sikong Xuani's body trembled. A sword aura soared into the sky and pierced through the clouds. A terrifying crack actually appeared in the sky. The sword momentum split the sky. Sikong Xuani was warning Anya Minjia that if the latter took another step forward, it would be a battle of life and death. What a strong sword momentum! When everyone saw this scene, their eyes trembled violently, and their faces were filled with horror. A sword momentum split the sky. Sikong Xuani's sword principal strength was really terrifying. "Sikong Xuani, you're too full of yourself." Anya Minjia frowned and his face was extremely gloomy. He was obviously furious. However, he still maintained his calm. He knew Sikong Xuani very well. If the two of them really fought to the death, the most likely outcome would be that both sides would be injured or even killed. He didn't want to fight Sikong Xuani unless he had no other choice. More importantly, he had come here to take Nye Tian away, and he had to take him away unharmed. If he accidentally injured Nye Tian in his battle with Sikong Xuani, it would be terrible. Anya Minjia's face darkened and he suppressed his anger. He glanced at Zhuozhuo and the others and said, "Sikong Xuani, you're here because of Master Zhuozhuo and the Swift Wind Tribe, right? I can promise you that if you let me take Nye Tian away, the Inua Empire will never cause trouble for the Swift Wind Tribe again. I can also guarantee that as long as I, Anya Minjia, am here, no one can touch the Swift Wind Tribe." Chapter 2165. Anya Minjia's voice was not loud, but it was like a thunderclap in everyone's ears. No one thought that in order to take Nye Tian away, Anya Minjia would make such a promise. Not only did he ask the Inua dynasty to stop, but he also guaranteed the safety of the Swift Gale clan in his own name. In Bushio's face was gloomy. He was obviously unwilling, but he did not dare to say anything. If the Inua ancestor was here, perhaps the Inua dynasty would have some say, but now, he could only listen obediently. In Xianyue was stunned. His eyes were vicious, but he did not dare to make a sound. "Anya Minjia, your offer is very tempting." At this time, Sikong Xuani was silent for a while, and finally said, "Unfortunately, I don't accept it. I don't accept it." When Anya Minjia heard Sikong Xuani's answer, his eyes suddenly trembled, and he almost suspected that he had heard wrong. He had made such a generous offer, but Sikong Xuani still did not accept it, which was far beyond his expectations. "Sikong Xuani, are you crazy? You're actually willing to bet your life for a kid of unknown identity? You don't even know who he is." The next moment Anya Minjia roared, and the Dark Knight sword essence suddenly burst out, and the surrounding space suddenly fell into darkness. "Anya Minjia, stop talking nonsense and fight." Sikong Xuani's face suddenly darkened, and he roared wildly. His whole body's sword momentum bloomed in the air, and between heaven and earth, there was a majestic and boundless sword essence. Rumble! The next moment, the two men's sword momentum collided in the air, like two terrible beasts, and the space between heaven and earth suddenly shook. The ground below, under the impact of the sword momentum, was directly torn apart. These two people are so terrifying. The shocking scene in front of him made Nye Tian's expression change, and he exclaimed in his heart. Sikong Shwani and Anya Minjia were indeed legendary swordsmen, and their sword strength was too terrifying. Just the collision of sword momentum was already so terrifying. If it was a real battle of life and death, the scene would be unimaginable. In Moon Army, retreat. At this time, In Bushio suddenly shouted and ordered the In Moon Imperial family's experts to retreat. The collision of the swords just now made him feel the terror of the legendary of the sword world. If there was a big battle now, the impact of the sword will alone would be enough to kill all the powerful warriors of the Inue royal family. The In Moon army immediately reacted and frantically retreated. On the other side, the people of the Galewind clan were also retreating. Nye Tian and the others also wanted to retreat, but Zhuo Zhuo stopped them. "It's safer for us to stay here," Zhuo Zhuo said with a frown, looking at Azurahan and the others. Nye Tian and the others couldn't be too far away from Sikong Shwani, or Azurahan would attack them. "Sikong Shwani, do you really want to fight me?" High up in the sky, Anya Minjia's voice rang out again. Boundless dark sword essence roared in the air. "Anya Minjia, you talk too much nonsense," Sikong Shwani responded in a cold manner. His attitude was quite domineering. Arrogant. Anya Minjia was provoked several times, and finally couldn't stand it anymore. He roared, "Sikong Shwani, do you really think I'm afraid of you? If you want to fight, I'll fight with you." Anya Minjia no longer hesitated. An ancient black sword appeared in his hand, and he directly stabbed it out. Suddenly, the dark night sword essence in the surrounding space gathered together and turned into a giant dark sword. Like an ancient giant beast, it roared and pressed down on Sikong Shwani. "This is too terrifying." Nye Tian looked up at the sky, and his face stiffened. Anya Minjia's sword actually condensed a sword shadow that was tens of thousands of meters long. That kind of monstrous momentum, like the rolling dark night, could almost devour everything. He knew that this was definitely not Anya Minjia's real strength. It was just a casual sword move. At this moment, Nye Tian really felt how terrifying the real strength of a real expert was. "Very good." In the air, Sikong Shwani's voice rang out. The gigantic sword image beneath his feet didn't move in the slightest as an ancient-looking sword appeared in his hand. He stabbed out diagonally in the air as a mountainous and ocean-like sword intent gushed forth. A sword image akin to a waterfall appeared, gushing forth with a whistling sound. Rumble! Rumble! High up in the sky, the two sword shadows were like enormous dragons, rumbling through the air as if they were about to collide. Not good! When everyone saw this, their faces fell, and they began to cry out in alarm. Rumble! In the next moment, the sword images collided, and a rumbling that seemed as if the heavens and the earth were collapsing resounded. After that, the two sword images froze in midair, and it seemed as if time and space had stopped for an instant. In the next instant, a violent ripple of sword energy that was visible to the naked eye appeared, and it surged towards the surroundings and spread madly through space. Rumble! 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 As the sword wave spread out, the ground was torn apart. On the ground, sand and stones were crushed, and dust filled the air. As for the weaker paramount gods, they were sent tumbling backward, and many of them were sent tumbling backward. Nye Tian and the others were the closest to Sikong Shwani and Anya Minjia, but they were protected by Sikong Shwani's sword will, so they were the safest. At this time, Nye Tian looked back at the houses behind him. Fortunately, they hadn't been destroyed. These houses were protected by a grand spell formation, so if Sikong Shwani and Anya Minjia hadn't attacked them directly, they wouldn't have been destroyed. Rumble! Up in the sky, ear-piercing sounds rang out as the two sword shadows collided and devoured each other. but neither could destroy the other in an instant, and could only slowly break apart. Nye Tian looked up at the scene above, and his heart was filled with shock. He had never imagined that a martial artist could be this strong. Fortunately, the two were fighting in the sky. If they had been fighting on the ground, the entire Dark Night City would have been reduced to ruins. The terrifying sword will wreaked havoc in the sky, and after a long time, it gradually weakened. High up in the sky, two figures appeared. They were Sikong Xuani and Anya Minjia. The two of them seemed to have calmed down a lot. They looked at each other, but showed no signs of fighting again. Sikong Xuani, you know what will happen if we keep fighting, Anya Minjia said. The next sword will destroy the entire Dark Night City. Millions of people will die. If that happens, how are we going to explain this to the higher-ups? Anya Minjia said coldly, as if he was worried about something. Anya Minjia, you're afraid of the higher-ups, but I'm not. If worse comes to worst, I'll just let them come after me. Sikong Xuani smiled faintly, as if he didn't care at all. Sikong Xuani, you madman! Aren't you afraid that this fragment of the holy world beneath our feet will be destroyed? Anya Minjia was so embarrassed that he was trembling with rage. Of course I am. Sikong Xuani laughed. That's why we both let go and let our young friend Nye Tian go. Chapter 2166. Anya Minjia roared with determination in his eyes. His words stunned Sikong Xuani, who fell silent for a moment. Sikong Xuani, give up. You can't afford to offend that lord, Anya Minjia said coldly with a smile when he saw that Sikong Xuani was silent. Nye Tian's eyes narrowed at their conversation. It seemed that the whole thing was more complicated than he had imagined. Originally, Nye Tian had thought that the person who wanted to capture him was a Jurahan, but then Anya Minjia had appeared. Now, Anya Minjia had said that someone else wanted to see him. Things seemed to be getting more and more complicated. Anya Minjia's strength had reached a terrifying level, and the person he had mentioned seemed to be able to order him around. Didn't this mean that the person behind him was even more powerful? And judging from Sikong Xuani's attitude, it was obvious that he was very afraid. The lord that Anya Minjia had mentioned was a terrifying figure. With these thoughts in mind, Nye Tian's expression flickered with astonishment. He had a feeling that he had entered a heaven-shaking world, and that he had unwittingly become a very important part of it. This feeling was very strange. It disappeared in a flash, making him feel like he was in a dream. Zhuozhuo's face also stiffened. Obviously, he knew who the lord that Anya Minjia had mentioned was. Anya Minjia. At this time, Sikong Xuani suddenly spoke. He looked at Anya Minjia and said, as long as you can take Nye Tian away, you will do whatever it takes. Yes. Anya Minjia nodded firmly, his expression extremely firm. Even if the sacred world fragment under our feet completely collapses, you won't care? Sikong Xuani's eyes trembled as he asked coldly. I came here on the Lord's order. I don't think that Lord will mind even if I really destroy the sacred world fragment. Anya Minjia's mouth twitched, his eyes cold as ice. Nye Tian could not help but frown as he listened to their conversation. Obviously, the sacred world fragment that Sikong Xuani and Anya Minjia were talking about was actually the world in front of them. Nye Tian had long known that the land of the abandoned was made up of countless sacred world fragments. If Sikong Xuani and Anya Minjia fought to the death, the sacred world fragment under their feet would be destroyed, and countless people would die in vain. Thinking of this, Nye Tian frowned even more. He really did not understand why he was so important. In order to catch him, the Lord was willing to destroy this world. Anya Minjia's words silenced Sikong Xuani, who seemed to be weighing something. Sikong Xuani, give it. Sikong Ming, Sikong Xuani said. Since that's the case, then let us destroy this world together. However, right at that moment, Sikong Xuani suddenly spoke with a strange smile on his face. Sikong Xuani, you. Anya Minjia stared at Sikong Xuani in astonishment. It took him a few seconds to react and say, you're crazy. Sikong Shwani, you. Anya Minjia looked at Sikong Shwani in astonishment. After a few seconds he said, "You are crazy." Sikong Shwani's words were very clear. In order to protect Nyetian, he would not hesitate to destroy this world. Huh! Nyetian frowned. Sikong Shwani's reaction was beyond his expectation. Zhuozhua also looked at Sikong Shwani in astonishment. She also found it strange. It was not strange that Sikong Shwani wanted to protect Nyetian, but it was strange that he did not flinch in the face of such great resistance. Sikong Shwani, you are going to make an enemy of the Lord for Nyetian. You should know better than me what the Lord's status is in the land of the abandoned. You are seeking your own death. Anya Minjia roared furiously. I know what I am doing. Sikong Shwani's answer was very calm, even a little too calm. In that case, don't blame me. Remember, you asked for it. Anya Minjia's expression suddenly changed. Brother Guangwu, come out! Sikong Shwani was stunned by Anya Minjia's words. His expression immediately changed, and he raised his head to look at the void in the distance. Boom! At this moment, a white halo appeared in the void, and a figure in white slowly walked out of the halo. Everyone was stunned by this sudden scene. They opened their mouths wide, but were unable to say a word. Who would have thought that there would be a person hiding in the void? Nye Tian looked at the figure in white, who was surrounded by a holy halo. He looked calm and restrained his aura, but he could not hide his fierceness. A swordsman! Nye Tian's heart trembled as he exclaimed. Although he did not see any sword essence from the figure in white, he could feel that the latter's body contained an extremely terrifying sword essence, which was definitely not weaker than Sikong Shwani's and Anya Minjia's. He is. Zhuozhua, who was standing next to Nye Tian, was stunned for a moment. Then she shouted a name, Effulgent Sword Saint, Effulgent Phoenix. Effulgent Sword Saint? When Nye Tian heard Zhuozhua's words, he could not help but be stunned. Another legendary swordsman? He had guessed correctly. The figure in white was called Effulgent Phoenix, and he was another legendary swordsman. Effulgent Phoenix, I didn't expect you to come as well. Sikong Shwani frowned and looked at Effulgent Phoenix. He couldn't help but smile bitterly. He had never expected that in addition to Anya Minjia, Effulgent Phoenix would also appear. Effulgent Sword Saint. The others also reacted at this moment and exclaimed. Their faces were almost numb from the shock. They had experienced too many shocks today, and it was obvious that they could not accept it. The mysterious Sky Sword Saint, Anya Sword Saint, and Effulgent Sword Saint, the three legends of the sword world in the land of the abandoned, had appeared at the same time. Such a scene had never happened before. Sikong Shwani, after so many years, you are still as stubborn as ever. At this moment, Effulgent Phoenix's figure landed. His expression was calm, and he had the temperament of a master. Sikong Shwani shook his head and smiled. Effulgent Phoenix, I really didn't expect someone like you to be reduced to working for that lord. Effulgent Phoenix's eyes lit up. He didn't explain anything and directly said, Sikong Shwani, you can leave. I will explain everything to that lord, and I believe he will forgive you. Sikong Shwani raised his eyebrows and let out a strange laugh. That lord is still as meticulous as ever. In order to capture Nye Tian, he actually asked for 2 legendary swordsmen. I'm really curious. What exactly does Nye Tian have to make that lord so interested? Curiosity killed the cat. Some things are better left unknown. Effulgent Phoenix smiled and directly said, Sikong Shwani, you can leave. Chapter 2167. Sikong Shwani's words stunned Anya Minjia and Guangwu Fengyan. Their faces sank at the same time. It seemed that Sikong Shwani still wanted to protect Nye Tian. Nye Tian looked at the 3 people in the sky with worry in his eyes. He didn't know why Sikong Shwani wanted to protect him, but he knew that Sikong Shwani couldn't protect him anymore. Anya Minjia and Guangwu Fengyan weren't any weaker than Sikong Xuani. If they joined forces, Sikong Xuani wouldn't be able to take a single blow. Sikong Xuani, there are some things that you're wrong to be stubborn about. Guangwu Fengyan's eyes were filled with murderous intent. Do you think that you can stop the two of us with your strength? I can't, but I have to, Sikong Xuani replied coldly with a determined look in his eyes. You're stubborn. Anya Minjia and Guangwu Fengyan exchanged glances. They had already lost their patience with Sikong Xuani. This is your last chance. Are you leaving or not? I'm not leaving. Sikong Xuani smiled coldly. The sword aura around him surged like a raging wave in the sky, causing the space to tremble. It was obvious that he was going to fight to the death with Anya Minjia and Guangwu Fengyan. Oh no! Zhuozhuo's eyes trembled when she saw this, and she could not help but exclaim. He knew that if Anya Minjia and Guangwu Fengyan joined forces, they could definitely kill Sikong Xuani. Anya Minjia and Guangwu Fengyan were both yin-yang elves. The former was a night elf, while the latter was a light elf. The two of them were yin and yang, darkness and light. Their sword intents were extreme, but they could perfectly fuse. Under such circumstances, Sikong Xuani had no chance at all. Stubborn. At that moment, Anya Minjia and Guangwu Fengyan growled at the same time before releasing the sword intent within their bodies. Immediately, two extremely terrifying sword silhouettes appeared in the air. One was dark while the other was light. The dark sword shadow was like a giant beast of the night, releasing a dark aura. The bright sword shadow was like a blazing sun, flickering with a bright aura. Neither of the two sword shadows were any weaker than Sikong Xuani's sword shadows. At the next moment, the two sword shadows actually began to fuse together, instantly condensing into a massive light and darkness sword. The light and darkness sword stood tall in the sky. Half of it was glowing, while the other half was surging with black gas. Nie Tian felt the sword intent of the light and darkness sword, and his whole body stiffened. That kind of aura, that kind of momentum, was too terrifying, completely crushing Sikong Xuani. If the sword of light and darkness were to land, Sikong Xuani would definitely die. Sikong Xuani could clearly feel his sword intent being suppressed. At this moment, he actually felt like he was having difficulty breathing. Sikong Xuani, after this sword, there are only two legendary swordsmen left in the Forsaken Land. Anya Minjia and Radiance Phoenix Year's sword intents fused together, and their minds were connected. Their faces sank, and killing intent flashed in their eyes. With a thought, the light and darkness swords in the sky fell toward Sikong Xuani. Boom! In the next moment, the void was directly torn apart by the light and darkness swords, and a terrifying crack appeared in the sky. That was a space crack. Under the huge pressure of the sword, Sikong Xuani did not even have the chance to use his sword. He could only stand there, waiting for death. No! This shocking scene made Nie Tian growl in a low voice. As soon as he finished speaking, something strange happened. Swoosh! In the void, a golden light suddenly appeared, and directly hit the light and darkness swords. Hum! In the next moment, a strange scene happened. The seemingly inconspicuous golden light actually blocked the light and darkness sword. Then, with a dull sound of a sword, the light and darkness swords directly collapsed, and the sword intents overflowed, and were instantly absorbed by the space crack in the void. At this moment, a figure appeared and raised his hand. A huge palm shadow appeared in the sky, and directly reached out to the space crack. With a gentle touch, the space crack actually healed. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. Everyone's eyes stared straight at the sky, and their expressions were completely petrified. Sikong Xuani stood on the spot, and his forehead was covered with beads of sweat. He was completely stunned, and couldn't react for a long time. This was because at that moment, he thought that he was already dead. On the other side, Anya Minjia and Guangwu Fengyan were also stunned. They stared at the figure that suddenly appeared, and couldn't believe what they had seen. The two of them joined forces to launch a sword strike, but it was actually easily blocked by someone. What was even more terrifying was that this unknown person had directly healed the space crack. At this moment, two words appeared in their minds at the same time: sage. In their opinion, only a sage could possess such terrifying power. However, they were very sure that there were no sages in the abandoned land. So, who was this mysterious person in front of them? It's him. On the ground, Nye Tian looked up at the sky and finally reacted. His eyes trembled and he exclaimed in his heart. He had recognized the figure that had suddenly appeared. At this moment, the person that had blocked the light and darkness sword and healed the space crack was none other than the mysterious person that Nye Tian had met not long ago. It was the mysterious person that had forced Nye Tian to go through the blazing forbidden ground. Nye Tian had never expected this mysterious person to appear at this time. He had initially thought that the mysterious person had already left, but he had never expected him to suddenly appear. What shocked him even more was that the mysterious person's strength was too terrifying. Previously, he had always thought that the mysterious person's strength was only above Ming Jianyu's. However, the scene before him made him realize that the mysterious person's strength had exceeded his imagination. Although Ming Jianyu, Yin Buxiu, Azurahan, and the others had different strengths, they were all around half-sages. Meanwhile, Sikong Xuani, Anya Minjia, and Guangwu Fengyan were obviously stronger than half-sages, and should be close to sages. And now, the mysterious person's strength was obviously higher than the three legendary swordsmen. How strong was he exactly? Could he be a sage? Nye Tian's eyes were a little unfocused as he thought to himself. The abandoned land was just a fragment of the sacred realm. How could it contain a sage? While Nye Tian was shocked, the others were even more shocked. Everyone at the scene was dumbfounded, and even their breathing stopped. At this moment, the figure stood in mid-air, as if it was hidden in a special space. They could only vaguely see a figure, but their faces could not be seen clearly. Who are you? After a dozen seconds, Anya Minjia finally reacted. His eyes were trembling and his teeth were chattering as he mustered all his courage to ask. Chapter 2168. The mysterious man's voice was very calm, and didn't sound strange at all. In fact, it sounded very ordinary, no different from an ordinary person. When everyone heard the voice, their eyes widened, and they wondered if they had misheard. Nye Tian, on the other hand, was much calmer. What the mysterious man was saying was very similar to what he had said the last time he had seen him. Of course, most people would find it hard to accept that he was playing a game. Playing a game? Dark Knight Minjia's face went stiff, and he couldn't believe what he had just heard. Guangwu Fengyan was standing next to him, looking just as shocked. Yes, playing a game. The mysterious man chuckled. But I'm not playing with the two of you. I'm playing with the person behind you. You know who's behind us? Anya Minjia was taken aback. He swallowed his saliva and asked. You know who that person is? Guangwu Fengyan asked cautiously. In front of the mysterious man, the two legends of the sword world didn't have the slightest bearing to speak of. The mysterious man said one word and then stopped talking. Dark Knight Minjia and Guangwu Fengyan exchanged a glance and nodded. Obviously, the person the mysterious man was talking about was the person behind them. Very good. The mysterious man nodded slightly and said, Go back and tell the people behind you that the game I want to play is very simple. I'll give you 3 months. If you can't catch Nye Tian within 3 months, it'll be my win. If you can capture Nye Tian or kill him within 3 months, then I'll consider it my loss. If I win, I just want to see the person behind you. If I lose, I'll let him do whatever he wants to me. After saying that, the mysterious man seemed to turn around and look at Nye Tian. Dark Knight Minjia and Guangwu Fengyan were both stunned, and didn't know how to respond. They had only been ordered to catch Nye Tian, and didn't have the right to make decisions on behalf of the person behind him. Don't be in such a hurry to speak, the mysterious man said. There's a rule, the mysterious man said. Anyone participating in the game can't be stronger than a late paramount god. In other words, you can send people to kill Nyetian, but they can't be stronger than a late paramount god. This is the only rule, and it is a rule that both of us must abide by. At this point, the mysterious man paused and smiled. All right, you can answer me now. At this moment, Anya Minjia and Guangwu Fengyan looked at each other, not daring to speak. They were really just small fries and had no right to make decisions. Sir, what if we don't agree? After a short while, Anya Minjia finally opened his mouth and asked. Sorry, I'm a very playful person. If no one plays with me, I'll get angry. When I get angry, I like to kill people. The two of you are strong enough for me to kill. The mysterious man smiled faintly. His tone was as calm as water, as if he was talking about family matters. The faces of Anya Minjia and Guangwu Fengyan froze, and they were speechless for a long while. Since you can't make a decision, then I'll make my move. The mysterious man's voice rang out, and a cold killing intent appeared that enveloped Anya Minjia and Guangwu Fengyan. Wait! The two men's eyes trembled as they anxiously shouted. Have you made up your mind? I don't have much patience. Don't waste it. The mysterious man smiled faintly. Anya Minjia and Guangwu Fengyan exchanged a glance, then nodded and said, We agree. The two of them had no choice but to agree. A wise decision. The mysterious man smiled faintly. I'm sure the person behind you is smarter than you are. He'll definitely enjoy this game. You have to tell him not to break the rules. If he does, I'll get angry. If I get angry, many people will die, including the two of you, and those closest to him. Do you understand? The mysterious man's tone was calm, but his words were filled with indescribable dominance. Yes, we understand. Anya Minjia and Guangwu Fengyan nodded and said with trembling eyes. They had seen the mysterious man's strength, so they didn't doubt his ability at all. That's good. Now get out of here. The mysterious man's voice suddenly became low and cold. Anya Minjia and Guangwu Fengyan nodded at the same time. Then, they turned around and left, turning into two sword shadows and disappearing in the air. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they wouldn't have believed that the two legendary swordsmen could be so embarrassed. All the people below were completely stunned, and they stared at the mysterious man with their mouths agape. Who is this mysterious man? How powerful is he? What was going on in front of him? Sir, may I ask? Sikong Shwani suddenly opened his mouth, but he was interrupted halfway. I'll leave the rest to you. I have something to do with Nyetian. The mysterious man turned around and said to Sikong Shwani. Then, he looked at Nyetian and said in a loud voice, Young man, come with me. Nyetian's eyes flickered as he nodded and flew high up into the sky. Nyetian took a glance at Sikong Shwani and bowed to express his gratitude. Thank you, Senior Sikong. Sikong Shwani, on the other hand, was flabbergasted. He had no idea that Nyetian had such an unfathomably powerful expert by his side. I remember now. All of a sudden, Nyetian's expression flickered. Looking at Sikong Shwani, he exclaimed, I remember who you are. Who am I? Sikong Shwani seemed to be a little nervous. He didn't remember that he knew Nyetian. Let's go. However, before Nyetian could answer, the mysterious man moved and left with Nyetian. Sikong Shwani was stunned. He looked in the direction where Nyetian disappeared and murmured, Does he really know me? However, he didn't have time to think too much, because he had to deal with the gales. In the air, Nyetian and the mysterious man stood still. Nyetian looked at the mysterious man. Although he couldn't see the man's face, he could clearly feel his aura. The mysterious man seemed to be staring at Nyetian, but he didn't speak for a long time. Nyetian was also thinking. He was confused. With the mysterious man's strength, he could easily save him. Why did he insist on playing a game for 3 months? Was he trying to train him? Senior, we. The mysterious man didn't speak. Nye Tian couldn't stand it anymore. He was about to say something, but the mysterious man suddenly reached out a hand. Puff! Then, the mysterious man's body trembled, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Senior, you're injured! Nye Tian was stunned. He quickly stepped forward and tried to hold the mysterious man. Don't come near me! However, the mysterious man stepped back and gestured at Nye Tian to stay away. Senior, are you alright? Nye Tian stopped and looked at the mysterious man nervously. He didn't expect the mysterious man to be injured. Chapter 2169. Nye Tian's face froze when he saw that the mysterious man was heavily injured. This was something he had never expected. Although the mysterious man's aura was very strong, it seemed to be a little chaotic, as if there was a very terrifying force in his body that was constantly attacking his body. Previously, Nye Tian had been extremely shocked when he saw the mysterious man's attack. He had even guessed that the man's cultivation was very likely to be that of a legendary sage. Therefore, he had never expected that the mysterious man would be injured so badly. I'm fine. At this moment, the mysterious man seemed to take a deep breath and said with a wry smile, I didn't expect the joint attack of Anya Minjia and Guang Wu Fengyan to be so powerful. I was too careless this time. Nye Tian's eyes trembled when he heard the mysterious man's words. It was obvious that the mysterious man's injury had been caused by the joint attack of Anya Minjia and Guang Wu Fengyan. It seemed that the mysterious man's strength was not as strong as Nye Tian had imagined. Senior, can you tell me what's going on? Nye Tian asked in a deep voice as he felt the mysterious man's aura gradually stabilize. At this moment, there were countless questions in his mind. Everything that had happened today was too strange. Within a day, the 3 legendary swordsmen of the Forsaken Land had appeared at the same time, and the mysterious man's attack had set off a storm in Nye Tian's heart. In the past, he had never imagined such power. Everything that had happened today had shocked Nye Tian greatly. It was as if a door had been forcibly opened in his world, and this door led to a wider and boundless world. Nye Tian, I can't explain too much to you now, and there are many things that I'm still investigating. The mysterious man's tone became much more serious as he said, What you need to know now is that the person behind Anya Minjia and Guangwu Fengyan is a very powerful person. I'm afraid that even I might not be a match for this person. I'm guessing that the reason why he's looking for you is because of something on you. You're too weak now. You can't let him find you. Hearing this, Nye Tian frowned and said, Senior, you played that game with that person for 3 months to protect me and also to train me, right? Sort of. The mysterious man nodded and said solemnly, Nye Tian, this game is very important to both you and me. We must not lose. If we lose, both you and I will die. Senior, I understand. Nye Tian nodded his head. He was very grateful to the mysterious man before him. Although he did not know the identity of the mysterious man and had not even seen his face, he could feel that the mysterious man really cared about him. Previously, he had guessed that the mysterious man was an ancestor of the Nye family. However, he couldn't sense any bloodline connection from the mysterious man, so he gave up on the idea. Now, he felt that the identity of the mysterious man was no longer important. The most important thing right now was to survive. The mysterious man and the person behind him were playing a 3-month game, betting on whether or not Nye Tian could survive for 3 months. If Nye Tian survived, the mysterious man would win. If Nye Tian was captured or killed, the mysterious man would lose. If he lost, the mysterious man would have to pay with his life. Therefore, Nye Tian could not afford to lose this game. Fortunately, there was a rule that only late paramount gods and below were allowed to participate in the game. That was very important to Nye Tian. If it weren't for that rule, he wouldn't have been able to survive for 3 months. However, he was worried that the person behind Anya Minjia would abide by the rule. Don't worry, Nye Tian. the mysterious man said confidently, sensing Nie Tian's concern. They'll abide by the rule. Nie Tian could sense the confidence in the mysterious man. What should I do next, Senior? He asked. Don't ask me that. Ask yourself. Hearing Nie Tian's question, the mysterious man seemed to be a little unhappy, and said in a deep voice, Although you've participated in my game, you must remember that your life is your own. No one can decide your fate. What to do next is for you to think about, not me. Understand? Nie Tian's eyes narrowed, but he didn't get angry. Instead, he nodded. He was not a fool. Of course, he understood the meaning of the mysterious man's words. The mysterious man was trying to tell him that he must have his own opinion at all times. Let me ask you a question, Nie Tian. Suddenly, the mysterious man seemed to have thought of something. What do you think of Sikong Xuani? Nie Tian was taken aback by the mysterious man's sudden mention of Sikong Xuani. He nodded. This is the first time I've met Senior Sikong. He came here to protect the Gale Storm at Grandmaster Zhua's invitation. But for me, he didn't hesitate to fight Anya Minjia and even risked his life to protect me. I'm very grateful to him. With that, Nie Tian looked at the mysterious man, waiting for the latter's response. The mysterious man seemed to smile. After a moment of silence, he stared straight at Nie Tian. Nie Tian, is this what you really think? You don't need to have any misgivings in front of me. Just say it. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed. He marveled at the mysterious man's precise observation skills. In fact, not only was Nie Tian grateful to Sikong Xuani, but he was also very suspicious of him. He wasn't an ungrateful person. It was just that Sikong Xuani's actions were indeed puzzling. And now, Nie Tian already knew who Sikong Xuani was. When he first met Sikong Xuani and heard this name, he felt that it was very familiar. It was just that he couldn't remember where he had heard it. Later on, he suddenly remembered that the first time he heard the name Sikong Xuani was from Sakra Shirtian. That's right. Sikong Xuani was Sakra Shirtian's senior brother, the first divine sword master of the divine martial sword pagoda. When Nie Tian realized this, he was also very shocked. However, he was very sure that this Sikong Xuani was Sakra Shirtian's senior brother because the two sword intents were very similar. The reason why Nie Tian suspected Sikong Xuani was because the latter risked his life to protect him. In order to protect Nie Tian, Sikong Xuani first fought Anya Minjia and then destroyed a world. Later on, he even fought against Anya Minjia and Guangwu Fengyan at the same time. It could be said that Sikong Xuani really didn't care about his life for Nie Tian's sake. Nie Tian and Sikong Xuani had only met for the first time. The latter repaid him with his life because of a sword intent resonance. This was obviously very suspicious. I suspect that Sikong Xuani has other motives. Nie Tian thought for a moment and no longer hesitated. He spoke his true thoughts. Chapter 2170. Sikong Xuani can't be trusted. Hearing the mysterious man's words, Nie Tian's eyes flickered, and he asked directly, Senior, did you discover something? Nie Tian only had some doubts about Sikong Xuani, but he didn't have any evidence. After all, Sikong Xuani hadn't shown any ill intentions since he appeared. However, the mysterious man's words were very certain, as if he had discovered Sikong Xuani's real purpose. Nie Tian, you're a swordsman, and a very perceptive one at that. The mysterious man smiled faintly and said, Let me ask you a question now. Do you think it's normal for you to have sword intent resonance with Sikong Xuani before? This. Hearing the mysterious man's question, Nie Tian's eyes narrowed, and he suddenly realized something. He exclaimed, I know, the sword intent resonance just now was fake. Sword intent resonance would only happen between two swordsmen of similar strength and sword intent. However, Nie Tian and Sikong Xuani didn't have the same sword intent, and they weren't swordsmen of similar strength. They didn't have the conditions for sword intent resonance at all. When the sword intent resonance happened before, Nie Tian's sword intent strength instantly improved, so he was very happy, which reduced his doubts. In addition, Sikong Xuani took the initiative to say that the sword intent resonance really happened, so Nie Tian no longer had any doubt. But now that he thought about it, sword intent resonance was simply impossible. That's right. The mysterious man laughed and said, the sword intent resonance between you and Sikong Xuani is indeed fake. He forged it. He also helped you improve your sword intent realm in secret. Do you think he has a purpose for doing this? To gain my trust. Nie Tian's eyes flickered and he exclaimed. He wasn't a fool. If he still didn't understand Sikong Xuani's intention at this moment, he would really be stupid. Correct. The mysterious man nodded and said with a smile, since Sikong Xuani appeared, he has only done one thing, and that is to gain your trust. In order to accomplish this, he did not hesitate to gamble with his life. Well, Nie Tian was struck dumb. After a while, he asked, what's his purpose? Isn't he worried that he'll be killed by Anya Minjia and Guangwu Fengyan? Of course he's worried. The corners of the mysterious man's mouth twitched and he said coldly, but some people, sometimes for some purposes, can disregard their lives. Do you think that Sikong Xuani came here because of Zhuozhuo? Actually, that's not it at all. He's here because of you. Furthermore, he's just a chess piece. There's someone even more powerful hiding behind him. Perhaps even he himself doesn't know why he approached you. Only the people behind him know his true motive. When Nie Tian heard what the mysterious man said, he was stunned. He stood rooted to the ground, unable to react for a long time. It seemed that he had been involved in a super conspiracy. In this conspiracy, he had inadvertently become a key figure. Many super experts hidden in the shadows wanted to find him. But he didn't know why. This feeling was very uncomfortable. It was as if he had become a little sheep, surrounded by vicious wolves that were eyeing him covetously. Nie Tian, I know you're confused about why you're so important. The mysterious man guessed what was on Nie Tian's mind. He said in a deep voice, I can't tell you too much right now. I can only remind you that the road ahead of you will be very difficult. But you have to go on, and you have to rely on yourself. Go all the way. Okay. Nie Tian nodded heavily, and his eyes became very firm. He saw a thorny road ahead, and he couldn't retreat. He had to go all the way. Senior, I'm curious. Since you know that Sikong Xuani's purpose is not pure, why did you still save him? Nie Tian couldn't help but ask. The mysterious man laughed and said, I've already said that Sikong Xuani is just a chess piece. In this shocking chess game, he is just a dispensable existence. If he dies, the person behind him will send someone else to get close to you. This won't be good for you. Since Sikong Xuani is no longer a threat to you, why not let him live? At least for now, he's not your enemy. Nie Tian nodded slightly, a faint smile appearing at the corner of his mouth. I understand, Senior. Since Sikong Xuani wanted to win his trust, all he had to do next was to pretend to trust him. Just as the mysterious man had said, if Sikong Xuani died, the person behind him would send someone else. Who knew what kind of abnormal existence this person would be? Leaving Sikong Xuani alive was beneficial to Nie Tian. Nie Tian, you have 3 months. After that, I will send you out of the abandoned land. The mysterious man looked at Nie Tian and said, however, you will be in great danger during these 3 months. You will be hunted down by countless people. What you need to do is to think of a way to survive. Don't bring anyone with you, just yourself. Understand? Nie Tian nodded. He knew what the mysterious man meant. Ming Jinyu was too strong and couldn't be brought along. If Mizuhara Kaori and the others followed him, they might not be able to help and would be in great danger. This time, he wanted to be a lone ranger and wander the abandoned land alone. However, Nye Tian's thoughts were not only about surviving, but also about completing his mission. Now that Di Shi Tian was safe, the next step was to find the spacetime crystal element. Also, he had to find Ni Jiaming and Di Shi within 3 months. Nye Tian, goodbye. At this moment, the mysterious man glanced at Nye Tian and was ready to leave. Senior, wait a minute. However, Nye Tian shouted and stopped the mysterious man. Is there anything else? The mysterious man frowned and asked. Senior, I would like to ask if you know where to find the spacetime crystal elements in the abandoned land? Nye Tian's eyes flickered as he asked. He was completely unfamiliar with the abandoned land, so it would be difficult to find the spacetime crystal element. The mysterious man was very familiar with the abandoned land, so it wasn't too much to ask him for information. That ancient Ming elder brought you to the abandoned land to find the spacetime crystal elements? The mysterious man was stunned for a moment before he asked. Yes. Nye Tian nodded slightly and didn't hide anything. He told him about the crisis that the Jiuli demon region was facing. I see. The mysterious man smiled faintly and thought for a moment. He raised his palm and threw a map scroll to Nye Tian. 1,000 Demons Cave in the Burial Cloud Mountain Range. With that, the mysterious man did not stay any longer. His figure directly disappeared in the air.